Good morning, all. We are active on TikTok. TikTok is definitely working. I see that. Instagram is working. Good morning. Facebook is starting. We're live in Rumble Studio, live on YouTube, live on X. We are getting on word from LinkedIn. We just got word from LinkedIn. We're going officially live on LinkedIn. Good morning, Courtney. Good morning, Nikki. Glad you two in here early as usual. Nikki and Courtney, thank you for jumping in early. Facebook, we're still waiting for it to officially say it is started. Facebook was doing this yesterday, but I'm not waiting on Facebook. We need to get into our topic here today. Today, we're going to talk the legalities of self-defense. We're going to talk specifically about the situation that happened over in the state of Texas. I know I got some Texas people who are tuning into this. Those of you who are, or those of you who are from Texas who generally tune into my live streams, we're going to talk about this situation that happened down in Texas. Most of you, especially if you live in Texas, you know about it, but many of you may not have heard about it yet. And am I going to wait on Facebook? I'm not waiting on Facebook. I don't know what Facebook is doing, but many of you may not have heard about it yet. But just to give you a quick overview of what occurred is there was a track meet happening in the state of Texas. It was in the town of Frisco, Texas, not San Francisco, but Frisco, Texas, where some black kid, allegedly, this is all alleged because everything's going off of he say, she say right now. But some of the things that we generally do believe to be true, that we generally have accepted as truth, there's a lot of things we have not accepted as general truth. And there's a lot of conjecture going on right now. But the things we can agree on is that there was a track meet and it was in Frisco, Texas. We agree on that. We also agree that some black kid went and sat under a tent that was allegedly not the tent that he was supposed to be sitting under. That we also agree to. We also agree that a white kid who was on the football team, allegedly, he can't actually agree he's on the football team. He came up to the black kid and told the black kid that he couldn't sit there, that he needed to move. And the black kid somehow, some way resisted this assertion from the white kid. This led to some form of altercation between the white kid and the black kid. Now, what kind of altercation? We have not agreed. We haven't all even agreed on the facts of that yet. So I'm not even going to say what we know happened. We're just going to say what people are asserting has happened, which is some people are saying that the black kid said to the white kid, make me move. And there was some type of argument. Then some people are saying that the kids tried to beat up the black kid and that didn't work. And then some people are saying, are we live on Facebook or what? I don't know what's going on Facebook here. And some people are saying that there was some history between these two kids. We don't really know what's actually happened here. We really don't know. What we do agree to is that somehow, some way, there was some type of scuffle or altercation. And the black kid pulled out a knife and he stabbed the white kid in the chest. And then he fled the scene, the black kid, or fled that area right there. The white kid had his twin brother with him, and the white kid bled out on the spot. So the white kid dies on the spot from the stab wound that he got from the black kid. That this all started over the white kid telling the black kid, you can't sit in the seat. And both of these kids are somewhere around the ages of 16, 17 years old. So this is two teens having some type of altercation, verbal altercation. Some say it also became physical, that the white kid might grab the black kid, or he grabbed the black kid's backpack, or he tried to beat the kid up, or he tried to break the kid's phone. We don't actually know because there's a whole bunch of different stories coming out from different sides. And some of these people who are coming out with stories are not even on a side because they weren't there. They don't know what actually happened. They haven't talked to anyone who actually knows what happened. But this is at a high school track meet that was happening at a stadium. So this is a big stadium. There's a bunch of people who were there, but the people who were actually there, I haven't heard much from them on the record saying, I was there, I saw it, here's what happened. I haven't heard anybody say that. I was there, I saw it, here's what happened. The only person who's come out and said that I've seen so far has been the twin brother of the white kid who got stabbed. I haven't heard anyone else who was actually there say those three things. And until I hear someone who was actually there say it, then I can't really go off anything I hear anybody else saying. Again, three things. I was there, I saw it, here's what happened. Now, allegedly, there were a lot of people there because, again, this is a high school event and this is some type of track meet that's taking place. There had to be a whole bunch of kids around who saw it, but they haven't gone no public with it yet for a good reason. We know one of the good reasons is because this is a ongoing legal case. So the black kid, He didn't flee like the town. He got arrested right there on the scene, somewhere in the vicinity. He got arrested. Allegedly, when he was in police custody, he asked the cops if he would be able to claim self-defense. We're going to talk a little bit about that, not what he said, but the actual claim of self-defense, because that's what a lot of this conversation has become at this point. And there's another good reason why a lot of kids who may have seen what happened, it was probably a bunch of high school kids who saw what happened, and probably not even an adult. Even if there was an adult who saw it, a lot of them are not saying much publicly right now and outing themselves personally as someone who witnessed it, for one really good reason, is that this is a black kid who stabbed a white kid. So the white kid, good morning, son. You want to come here and join? You want to join my live stream with me? There's no water in there? Yeah. Do you need some? Yeah. I'll give you some from my bottle. All right, y'all hold on 1 second. I got to refill a 2-year-old's bottle. Give me 30 seconds. All right, let me use some water. You going to join my live stream? I'm not. No? You just going to get some water and leave? Yeah. You can join the live stream if you want. You want to join my live stream? No. Okay. Okay, you take the water. I'll see you later. All right, so he's just using me to get some water. But anyway, let's continue. There's a black kid and a white kid, and we all know how things get when there's a racial issue in the United States of America, especially one that becomes violent. We have plenty of examples of this. I don't even need to name names. All of you know it. And many people in general, talking and sharing their opinions on this, have become widely divided because I'm not even going to put this on any one group, because there are some white people who are trying to make this a white versus black thing, and there are some black people who are trying to make this a white versus black thing, and neither of them is correct. I understand both groups, and people who are in both groups are trying to make it a white versus black. You've seen Matt Walsh from who is he from? The Daily Wire. Matt, the guy with the beard. Matt Walsh has come out and made some comments about black violence in general that are some of the things that he said are statistically accurate, but while at the same time, some people are pissed off that he's making these comments. But this is kind of what he does. I'm not mad at him for doing it. And of course, there are black people who will come out and they have thrown things out there that are allegedly what happened in the situation. But again, until I hear somebody with all three, I was there, I saw it, here's what happened. Until I hear someone who can say that, then I'm not going off of any accounts. We're just going to go off what we know to be true, which is what I've already told you. So what we're going to talk about here today are some of the things that we do know to be true outside of the actual facts of the situation, which we do not know just yet. We're not really going to know until there's a court case. So this black kid has been charged with murder in the first degree, which is a very stiff charge, because you could get second degree, third degree, you can get manslaughter, you can get involuntary manslaughter. There's a lot of different things he could be charged with. He was charged with murder in the first degree, which we'll see if that ends up being the actual charge when they go to court. Right now, there's competing, I guess you can say, GoFundMe campaigns for both of these kids. So the white kid who's his family, the kid died, the twin brother died. There's a GoFundMe. There's two GoFundMes because the parents are not together. So the mom, who I believe was raising the kids or had the kids under her care, she has a GoFundMe, and the dad, he has a GoFundMe. And then there's a GoFundMe for the family of the black kid who did the stabbing, and he's incarcerated, and they both are probably going to need some money for different reasons. So this is a whole clusterfuck of a situation, for lack of a better term, and it's only getting messy because of the races involved. This has been a black kid stabbing a black kid. This would not be news. And keep it real, black folks who are listening to this right now, you wouldn't know about it, nor would you care if it was a black person stabbing a black person. If it was a white person stabbing a white person, white folks, y'all keep it real. This would not be a news item. So only reason this is a news item, and the only reason that I'm talking about it and you care to hear what I have to say about it, and you care to share your own opinion, and I will respond to questions and comments when I get through my content here today. Only reason this is a story is because of the races involved, and because it was doesn't even matter which way it goes. The black kid stabbing a white kid, or had it been a white kid stabbing a black kid, that's what is making this into a story. And that's where we are in the United States of America right now, just to be honest. That's the situation. We're here in the United States of America where how do I take this now? I'm trying to set my timer here. I'm trying to make it here in the United States of America, this is the situation that we're in, that when there's a racial issue, people get all excited just because of the races involved. And now we got to talk about it from a racial basis rather than a factual basis. But good news for all of you here. I'm going to talk about it based on the things that we know to be true. And again, where this goes. So introducing myself, for those who don't know me, my name is Dre Baldwin. Many know me as Dre all day. I'm a former 9-year professional athlete, author of 41 books. I'm 4 TEDx talks. I own this company called Work on Your Game Incorporated. We help professional entrepreneurs scale and systematize their businesses from the 6 to the 7-figure level. You learn more about that by going to the links in my profile. But let's get into this topic here today, as I already gave you in an intro right here. First of all, on social media, which is what we're all on right now. I'm live streaming, by the way, on 7 different platforms. TikTok is over here. Instagram is in front of me. We got Facebook, Rumble, X, LinkedIn, and YouTube over here to my left. On social media, which is a cross-section but not completely representative of the country. Any of you who uses social media a lot, like myself, you must understand that what you see and hear on social media is not representative of the country, is representative of the people in the country who use social media. Most people do not use social media, and even those who do, most of them do not talk on social media. So those of you who talk on social media, you are not representative of all of the United States. So, and do not be fooled by the things you hear on social media to think that that's the way most people think. If you did think that, you should just look back to the 2016 presidential campaign cycle to realize that what you hear and see on social media is not representative of the country. But anyway, on social media, a lot of people seem to be applying these playground/lunchroom rules to the situation. This is specifically where I'm going to hold some Black people accountable. They're using these playground rules and these lunchroom rules, which is if the other person started it, you finish it, which is something that maybe some of your parents told you when you were a child. Maybe it's something that you tell your own kids. Maybe it's something that you operate by in your own personal code of conduct, that if someone else starts something with you, or let me back up, you don't start things with other people, but if someone else starts something with you, you make sure you finish it. Now, you don't start fights, but you finish them. Again, some of our parents taught us that as kids. Some of you who are now parents, you teach that to your kids. And even if you're white, you may teach that to your kids and may operate by that same code of conduct. And I am here to tell you, you are not necessarily wrong. You're not necessarily wrong. If I'm at the mall and somebody comes and starts some shit with me, then I might do something back to them to defend myself. And if someone, a mall security guard comes along and says, "Why'd you do that?" I say, because they started with me. I wasn't bothering them. They came and bothered me. And that's why I did what I did. And I am not necessarily wrong for doing that. And while this is true, again, this is not the playground. This is not the lunchroom when it becomes a legal situation. Because if you take another person's life, now what you have done is you've used what they call, what's the term? I forgot the term that I was going to say. You have used deadly force. That's the term. And we're going to talk about this term a lot here today because that's what this is all staking on. You use deadly force. If you use deadly force against another person, regardless of why you think you did it, or even if you believe it's justified and you think you can exonerate yourself in court, if you use deadly force, as soon as you do so, you have now put yourself in a position where you're going to have to appear in front of a judge. All right, everybody can agree with that. Everybody agree with that? Have I lost anybody yet? All right, if you use deadly force, you will appear in front of a judge and you must now justify why you use that deadly force. Now, again, maybe the judge and the jury will accept your reasoning. Maybe they will not. Maybe it'll be somewhere in between. But as soon as you use deadly force, now you're in a situation where it has to go in front of a judge because we cannot ignore the deadly force that you just used, especially if a police officer finds out about it. That's usually how you end up in front of a court. Everybody got that? So if someone starts something with me in the mall and I smack them in the face, maybe I can go home and they can go home and nothing ever comes of the situation because it's not deadly force. But if I pull out a gun and use it, now that's deadly force. Even if you don't pass away, even if I don't fire the weapon, even if I hit you and you survive, or if you pass away, now I got to appear in front of a judge. Why? Because I pulled out a weapon and used deadly force against you. That's how it goes. If I pull out a knife and try to stab you or poke you or cut you with it, that is deadly force. And now I got to appear in front of a judge and I have to explain to the judge and to the jury why I did what I did. Now, again, maybe I can explain it well enough that I can go home. Maybe I don't explain it well enough and I go to jail. But either way, something's going to happen at that point. And we need to keep this point in mind, especially all of you who are applying these lunchroom and playground rules to your behavior because you think that just makes it okay. It does not make it okay. Okay, so if someone touched me first, I have the right to defend myself. In general, you're right. But at the same time, just because you have a right to defend yourself does not mean that you are excluded from having to deal with the consequences of that. And sometimes the consequences doesn't necessarily mean that you're wrong. You're going to end up in jail, but you may end up in court. And going to court means you have to spend time defending yourself. Going to court means you have to spend money hiring a lawyer. Going to court means you might end up losing, despite the fact that you went to court, despite the fact that you hired a lawyer. You still got to answer for the behavior that you decided to partake in. And that's an inconvenience for you at worst. That's inconvenience for you at best, and you end up incarcerated at worst. So these are all things you got to keep in mind. So I want all of you to understand, as soon as you use deadly force, you're not in the lunchroom anymore. You're not in the playground anymore, even though you may have done it in the lunchroom or on the playground. Now you're in the court of law. And when you step into the court of law, it doesn't matter what the other kids in the lunchroom or what the other kids on the playground think, because they're not the judge and they're not the jury. Now, let me take a sip of water while you digest what I just said. As soon as you use deadly force against another person, you now must step into a courtroom where now all that matters is not what your classmates think or how much, quote unquote, respect you're going to get in the streets because of what you did. But now you got to deal with a judge, and you got to deal with a jury, and you got to deal with lawyers, and you got to deal with the laws on the books, which, while you may understand the laws of the playground, most people do not understand the laws on the books of a state, because there are so many of them that they're written specifically so that the only people who understand them are lawyers and judges. That's the whole point. That's the reason why they're written like that. And it's the reason why, those of you who are not familiar with my work, I have a show that comes out every day. Now, most of you call these shows podcasts. I call mine a masterclass, but it comes out every day. Same place you can find podcasts. It's called Work on Your Game. And I did an episode. Let me tell you what number episode that was so that all of you know that I'm not lying to you. I want to make sure you all know my receipts. I talked about the legal system in the United States of America. And the legal system, let me see, maybe I spelled, let's call it something else. The justice system in the United States of America, episode number 2395, episode number 2395. I told you about the justice system in America and some truths about the justice system. Here's one truth about the United States criminal justice system. You do not want to be engaged in it unless you happen to be a lawyer or a prosecutor or a judge. Or I guess if you're a bailiff or a court stenographer. So if you got a job working there, then cool, be in there. But you don't want to be in there as on the defense side, sitting at the court bench. You don't want to be there in the criminal justice system at all. Even if you feel like what you did was justified, you don't want to have to go to court to defend yourself. You don't want to have to pay for a lawyer to make sure that you stay free and out of jail. And you don't want to have to pay those bills to that lawyer, because lawyers ain't free. Any of you know any lawyers? All right, ask them how much they charge. All right, they ain't free. You don't want to end up in the criminal justice system in the United States of America, because at that point, you're gambling with your freedom. Because just because you believe what you did was justified does not mean the court will agree, which means you might end up in jail. Everybody understand that? And going to jail is not a good option. I think most of you can agree with that. And again, I'm going to take questions and comments at the end. So once you step into a court of law, all that your freedom and the rest of your life depends on are the laws on the books and how well your lawyer can argue that case against the state's lawyer, which is also known as the prosecutor, state's attorney, district attorney. All right, that's how it works out. If you can convince a jury that you have followed the law and your behavior was within the confines of the law, then you can go home. But if you don't do that well enough and the jury decides you didn't do it well enough, or that your lawyer didn't do it well enough, well, now you got to do some time, or you get probation, or whatever the situation happens to be. You don't want to be in a position where a jury of 12 of your peers are deciding your fate based on your behavior. Okay, so in the state of Texas, let's get more specific on this case, because a lot of people do not understand this. A lot of black people and white people are arguing on these details that don't really mean that much. And let me explain to you what I mean. Some people are saying, a lot of black folks are saying, I'm not saying everybody, but there's a lot of black folks out here throwing around, oh, well, it was self-defense. If the white boy started it with the black kid, the white boy approached the black boy, and he told the black boy he has to move, and the white kid doesn't have the authority to make somebody move, then that means he's starting it. Or if the white boy grabbed the black boy, that's what some people say, that he grabbed the kid, or that he grabbed the kid's backpack, or that he grabbed the kid's phone, or that the two white boys are known bullies, or they tried to beat him up, or he beat him up last week. If you look on social media, you're seeing all these different stories. All of these stories are complete nonsense. We don't know what's actually true until you hear somebody say, I was there, I saw it, here's what happened. Don't believe anything you hear on social media, that people claiming that they know what occurred. They don't know. People are just making shit up. So some people are saying, if the white kid started it in some way, shape, or form, which I think we generally agree, one thing we can generally agree on is that the white kid went to the black kid and somehow, some way communicated to the black kid that he desired for that black kid to move from where he was. So therefore, you could call that, quote unquote, starting it. Okay, let's say that you believe he started it. And then at some point he grabbed the black kid, or he grabbed the black kid's book bag. The white kid initiated the engagement. I think we can agree with that. He initiated the engagement. Here's the thing. In the state of Texas, because the state of Texas does have what they call a stand your ground law. The state of Florida has a stand your ground law. Where I live, the state of Florida is a stand your ground law. Many people became familiar with this law, like myself, at the time of the Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman situation, where George Zimmerman, who was allegedly standing his ground, was able to beat the case. And some people say, well, if that's what George Zimmerman did, and then that's what Daniel Penny did in New York when he choked out the black guy on the subway, then why is this situation any different? That's a good question. Actually, it's not that good of a question, but I'm going to answer that very simple, not critical thinking question, but I'm going to answer it because a lot of people seem to be making this simplistic connection between those two things, and they're not that much connected for several reasons. Number one, here's one right here. Daniel Penny happened in the state of New York, where they have certain laws on the books. George Zimmerman happened in the state of Florida, where they have certain laws on the books. This one happened in the state of Texas, where they have different laws on the books. The laws in each state are unique. That's why it's called the United States. There's not one federal law that applies to all of them. They each have their own laws and different interpretations of that law, even though they may have some of the same named laws. The stand your ground law is the name of the law, but that's not the actual law. The actual law in the books has a lot of details and a lot of specifics as to how that law applies and how that law does not apply. So just because the state of Florida says we have stand your ground and this guy got off based on stand your ground, and the state of Texas has stand your ground, then you think, well, whatever happened over here happens over here. Well, let's think about this a little bit more critically. You know about George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin, right? That kicked off the whole Black Lives Matter scam. Here's the issue. There's a whole bunch of other people in the state of Florida who have committed some type of violent act and used deadly force against someone else, claiming the stand your ground law, and they did not win their court cases. They actually did go to jail. How many of them do you know about? How many of them can you name? Most of you can't name one. In the state of Texas, there are people who have been found innocent based on using the stand your ground parameter for what they did. There are also people who have been found guilty when they tried to use the stand your ground parameter. So understand that just because stand your ground worked over here in this one case you can name, and it worked in New York in this one case you can name, just because you are claiming, or you are on the internet are claiming stand your ground for someone and you're not a lawyer, you're not going to go to court and argue on his behalf, that has no bearing whatsoever on what's going to happen in this case. I need all of you to understand that. And understand that if it was just that simple, then the adjudication of a court case, especially a criminal court case, especially one where someone has lost their lives, would take the same amount of time as going to court for a traffic ticket. And you ever been to court for a traffic ticket? You got like a speeding violation or something, and you decided to fight the ticket, and you went to court, and you had a court date, June 6th at 10 o'clock. You walked in the courtroom and walked out the courtroom like 45 minutes later. See, if all it took was I can just name a law that you heard of on the internet, and then that's the end of the case, then a criminal court case would take about 45 minutes. But any of you knows anything about criminal court cases, especially when we're talking about a loss of a life, those things take months, sometimes over a year to play out. And you have all those lawyers. Y'all remember the OJ case? How many lawyers did OJ have? He had Rob Kardashian, he had F. Lee Bailey, he had Johnny Cochran, he had Rob Shapiro, he had Alan Dershowitz. He had 5 lawyers. All right, if all you needed was 45 minutes to beat the case, then he wouldn't have needed 5 lawyers. He could have went and represented himself and just said, hey, stand your ground. It would have been over. It doesn't work that way, ladies and gentlemen. All right, all of you need to understand this. So all of you people getting your information from these simple-minded social media users who don't know what they're talking about, all right, they ain't going to court to defend themselves with that nonsense. If they had to go to court, if it was as simple as stand your ground, you wouldn't even need a lawyer. You understand? This is the reason why any of you has ever been charged with a crime before. The first thing the judge asks you before they even set a trial date is, can you afford a lawyer? That's what the judge will ask you. Can you afford a lawyer? You either answer yes, which means you got to go get one, or you answer no, which means the court will appoint a lawyer to you. And generally, the court doesn't even offer you the option. You technically have it, depending on how you want to play it. They only offer you the option of representing yourself in court. They basically demand that you have a lawyer. Why? Because the lawyers know the law, and everything that happens to you, your fate is decided by the arguing of the law, not the arguing of your personal perspective. So your personal perspective of he started it, I finished it, is not a legal argument, and therefore you're going to lose your case if that's all you got. So, and everybody's telling you this, he started it, so it's self-defense. That's nonsense. You can't win a court case with that. All right, you need a little bit more than that. This is not Sesame Street. Okay, so the law in using lethal force, deadly force in the state of Texas is the following. You must argue and prove in some way that the lethal force that you used to defend yourself, quote unquote, was used because the person who was coming at you, they were using some type of deadly force or unlawful violent force against you. Therefore, you are preventing unlawful force being used against you, or violent unlawful force being used against you, by being violent towards them. And if you cannot prove that, you're going to need a really good lawyer. All right, you're going to need Johnny Cochran, F. Lee Bailey, Alan Dershowitz, who's the other one? Rob Shapiro and Rob Kardashian to defend you like OJ did. All right, because if you can't prove that, your lawyers better be really, really good, and you better hope the prosecution is really, really bad. And by the way, the reason OJ got off because the prosecution was terrible. All right, Marsha Clark and Chris Darden, they fumbled that case. That's the reason OJ got off. The reason George Zimmerman got off because the prosecution in the state of Florida, they fumbled that case. If y'all don't know how those cases worked out, please look into them. That's why those people got off, not necessarily because they were necessarily innocent. Again, I don't want to argue the details of that right now. It's not the subject here today. In the state of Texas, you must prove that your deadly force was used to prevent some type of violent harm happening to you. The issue that this kid is going to have, his name is Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo, not the basketball player. Carmelo Anthony with a K. He's like 17. Issue this kid is going to have going to court, regardless of what you hear on Facebook, is that he used violent, lethal force against someone who, based on what we know to be true, was not using violent, lethal force against him. That's his challenge. That's the uphill battle he has to climb. Doesn't mean he can't win, but it's a very steep uphill battle he has to climb. You use violent, lethal force. It's kind of like if I'm in the mall, right? And somebody walks up to me and tries to shake my hand, and I don't want to shake their hand. And I just keep walking past them. And then they keep following behind me and say they want to shake my hand. I say, I don't want to shake your hand. They keep following me and they want to shake my hand. I don't want to shake their hand. Then I walk in the Foot Locker, and then they follow me in the Foot Locker. And I'm looking at sneakers, and they're still standing there trying to shake my hand. I say, leave me alone or I'm going to shoot you. And then they don't leave me alone. I pull out my gun and shoot them. I got a very stiff uphill battle to climb. That's a very steep uphill climb that I have to make to win that case in court, even though they started it, even though they are harassing me, even though they are following me, even though I'm bothered by their presence, even though I could say, well, this guy's like 6'6", I'm only 6'4", so I feared for my safety because this 6'6" guy kept following me around. Even with all of that, if I pull out a gun and shoot this guy, I had to justify how shooting him saved me from worse danger than getting shot. If I can't justify it, then I'm probably going to end up in jail. Y'all understand? And again, it depends on how the case gets played. It depends on how the prosecution brings it. It depends on the charge, and it depends on the arguments in court and in the detail level. But in the big picture level, that is how the law works. When you use deadly force against another person, the only real justification for it is that somehow, some way, someone was going to use some deadly force against you, and you prevented deadly force from happening to you by using it yourself. If you cannot make that argument, you got a problem, and you better have a really, really good lawyer. Does everybody understand this? All right, this is how it works. So there was a case years ago. There's a rapper by the name of Snoop Dogg. Y'all know Snoop Dogg? He used to call himself Snoop Doggy Dogg. Now he's Snoop Dogg. This is probably about 1990, mid-90s. This guy out here cutting hedges right outside my window. But anyway, Snoop Dogg is noted as being a gang member, right? So Snoop Dogg was in his gang neighborhood, wherever this was, whatever part of California, Compton, whatever, Long Beach. And some rival gang member was claiming that he was going to do some damage to Snoop Dogg using a weapon, a deadly weapon, also known as a gun. Snoop Dogg saw this guy about to do it, whatever this guy claiming he was going to do. Snoop Dogg took preemptive action and he shot that guy. So Snoop had an album years ago. Some of you old enough to remember. The album was called Murder Was the Case. That's literally, he named his album Murder Was the Case. He made a whole little movie, documentary type thing around this whole thing. Murder Was the Case. And this is like in the 90s. This is way before Snoop became this guy on TV with Martha Stewart. This is when he was real rapping gangster, going on TV, talking gangster, all this stuff. Way different than what he is now. And Snoop Dogg beat the case. And the reason Snoop was able to beat the case, it harkens back to what I just explained to you. If you're going to use deadly force against another person, you have to prove in court that they were about to do something to you. So any of you seen the TV show First 48? I've seen examples of this on First 48, where some kid is in the street and somebody threatens him in the street and says, hey, next time I see you, I'm going to kill you. And I got a gun and I'm going to do it. So the kid goes and gets his own gun. And the next time he sees that guy, before that guy shoots him, he shoots the guy. And then he gets arrested. And then the cops end up dropping the case because they call it self-defense, if you can prove it. But if you can't prove it, in this situation, like this kid, this Mr. Anthony kid, he's got an uphill battle. And as I already explained, his lawyer's got a lot of work to do. Regardless of what you hear on Facebook, regardless of how much money his GoFundMe raises, his lawyer's got a lot of work they got to do. Because the white kid, from everything that we've heard, was not using any type of violent, unlawful force against him. Maybe the kid grabbed him. Maybe the kid pushed him. Maybe the kid said, I'm going to punch you in the mouth. Are any of those going to threaten your life? Probably not. You pull out a gun and stab him in the heart and he dies? Call your lawyer. That's the only thing I would say. Call your lawyer. That's the way the law works, in case any of you didn't know. In this specific situation, again, they say he grabbed him. That is not unlawful. That is not violent. And this is why the lawyer is going to have a lot of work to do. They're probably going to need more than one lawyer. I don't know what his family situation is, but that's going to cost a lot of money. So if you are, for whatever reason, I don't even care what your reason is, if you want to defend this black kid based on what little that you know so far, I suggest you go get your credit card, go find his GoFundMe, and donate some money because they're going to have to pay those lawyers. I was just listening to, there's this weapon called a burner. Y'all heard of the burner? Byrna. It's a non-lethal weapon. It looks like a firearm, but it's actually not a firearm. And it is designed to basically disengage a person. So if a person's coming at you, trying to beat you up or hurt you or something, or break into your house, you can use the burner and it will disable them. So where they physically can't keep attacking you for like, let's say 15 to 30 minutes while you can get away from the situation. And there's some burner they make YouTube videos. So I was listening to this video the other day where they had these two lawyers who just happened to be from Texas. It wasn't about this case. These two lawyers who happened to be from Texas, they were talking about this. A couple of things y'all need to know about the legal system. In case any of you thinks that what this black kid did is something that you might do, I want you to keep a few things in mind. Number one, if you end up on trial for a homicide, meaning you took somebody else's life and you get charged by the police and you need to retain a lawyer, you know how much that costs? Any of you got an idea? What's the minimum amount you have to pay a lawyer for that case? Put the number in the chat. Put the number in the chat. Give me the minimum amount of money you're going to have to spend to retain a lawyer if you get a murder case in court. I see 10K, 10K, 30K. Some of y'all are very naive. $1,500, really? $1,500? Whoever said $1,500, you be serious. $5,000? No. $5,000? No. It's going to cost you about $100,000. About $100,000 for a lawyer who's any good. It's going to cost you about $100,000. Some of you saying 50, maybe 50, depending on where you live. Maybe the market isn't as large, but $100,000. A good lawyer, a homicide case in a well-populated place, it's going to cost you $100,000. That's you paying the lawyer, and that is no guarantee that you win. Mind you, it's not a civil case. It's not like you get money if you win. If you win, that means you just get to keep living your life. So if you win, nothing happens. You stay neutral. If you lose, you go to jail. You still got to pay the lawyer $100,000. So if you got $100,000 you just want to throw away, then you go do that. You go live with this, or they started it, so I'm going to do what I want to do. You need to be very careful and understand the law and how these things work. That's number one. Number two, I heard these lawyers say the following, and I just explained this a minute ago, is that anytime you use violent force or deadly force against another person, you and the court, and this is the law on the books, it's specifically in the state of Texas, you must prove that your use of deadly force was preventing something worse happening to you. If you cannot prove that, you end up being liable and you may be found guilty of something depending on what charge you have. So again, with this kid, Carmelo Anthony, they charged him with murder one. I don't know if they're going to keep it as a murder one charge. They may have different charges. They may lower the charge. I don't know. But murder one is a very serious charge. And you can look up what the possible penalty is in the state of Texas for a murder one conviction. Let's find out right now. What is the penalty for a homicide in the first degree charge in the state of Texas? So I'm asking ChatGPT, and they are searching the web. They're going to tell me the answer. Thank you for the roses over there on TikTok. Those of you are saying. They say in Texas, they don't actually use first degree murder. Instead, they call it homicide offenses, murder or capital murder. And it's classified as a first degree felony. Imprisonment ranges from anywhere from 5 years to 99 years. So that's a very, very wide range. So it depends on the situation. Let's just call it that. So again, let me reemphasize. This is for all of you, and generally this applies in every state. I'm going to say it one more time because all of you need to understand, especially the men out there, especially those of you who have this mindset of if somebody starts something with me, I'm going to finish it. And I, in certain ways, have that mindset as well. The only time you can justify using deadly force is if you can prove that someone else was going to use deadly force against you. In other words, if someone comes at you and they're just annoying you, you can't just pull out your gun and shoot them and say, well, they kept bothering me, so I shot them. Well, were they using violent force against you? If not, you shooting them is not justified. That's the point. You can't justify that. You can justify it in the streets. You can't justify it in court. So I want all of you to understand that what flies on social media and in the comment section on Facebook does not fly in a courtroom in front of a jury and a judge. And a lot of you need to understand that, especially you black folks, because I know where we come from. And we come from this, having this mentality, and white people, some of you, this applies to as well, but I'm not white. So I'm just speaking from the black experience, especially the black male experience, is that we come from this environment, many of us, especially if you're from the hood, where it's attack or be attacked. And if you aren't someone who poses themselves as a threat, then you may be attacked yourself. And again, on the playground, there's one set of rules. In the courtroom, there's another set of rules. Don't be stupid. So there's a continuum of force. This is also a legal term. Continuum of force. So I gave you the example. Let's say I'm in a mall, right? And some guy tries to walk up to me and shake my hand. I don't want to talk to him. I don't know who he is. I don't want to talk to him. So he keeps following me. I don't want to shake his hand. I go in the store where I'm not walking away anymore. Now he keeps walking up to me. I don't want to shake his hand. I could do something like cuss him out. I could do something like push him. I could do something like punch him in the face. I could do something like pull out my burner and use it to disable him. I could do something like pull out a knife and stab him. I could do something like pull out a gun and shoot him and possibly kill him. There's a continuum of force. You'll see that there's different levels of force. And if you go higher up on that continuum of force, you must justify every level you go up. You got to justify why you did that. And if you can't justify it, again, you might end up in prison because of what you did. Someone does something to you, even if they are trying to provoke you, however you respond, you cannot just claim self-defense. Even if you do think you are defending yourself, that will land you in jail. Even if you can justify it, you can justify it in your mind. You're sitting in jail, justifying in your mind why you did what you did. Okay, 20 years from now, you'll be out and you can tell the world how you can justify your behavior. Don't be stupid. Some people are asking why this case is no different, as we already mentioned, a few cases. Daniel Penny in New York, Kyle Rittenhouse in Wisconsin. Let's remember that one. And what's the other one? George Zimmerman in Florida. Well, I already told you, number one, this case that we're talking about here today happened in the state of Texas. Texas has their own laws. The state of Wisconsin, Kyle Rittenhouse, they have laws. The state of New York, Daniel Penny, they have laws. The state of Florida, George Zimmerman, they have laws. Is there a self-defense law in every state? On some level, yes. But again, they are all interpreted very differently. Every law is written specifically differently by lawyers. If you're not a lawyer and you don't want to learn how to read laws, you got to let your lawyer decide that. I would suggest you not be in a position where you need your lawyer to decide it. That's what I'm saying. I'm telling you to be smart instead of being tough. That's the thing all of you need to understand. I just did an episode on this on my show. Be smart rather than being tough. And this comes with a certain level of maturity and age. Now, 10, 15 years ago, I might not have been talking about what I'm talking about right now, but now I have the perspective to understand it. So in the state of Wisconsin, when it came to Kyle Rittenhouse, there was already a protest going on / riot happening. All of you know that was a protest and a riot. There were some people protesting. There were some people rioting. There was violence going on in the street. Mr. Rittenhouse was there. He had a weapon with him, which he legally had access to. He started being attacked, and he was being attacked by multiple people. He used his weapon to defend himself, and he was able to beat the case. Now, let's go to the other one. Now, I'll tell you what's common amongst all of these. New York, Daniel Penny. His argument was this black guy on the subway was making violent threats that he was going to do something to people. And he was under the influence of some narcotics, and he had a long rap sheet, a long track record of having done violent things to people. He actually had done it before. So it's not like this guy wasn't believable to have done something crazy. And Daniel Penny was just trying to restrain him and save everybody else on the train. And the guy ends up passing away. State of Florida, George Zimmerman is out being a overzealous, what do they call it? Like town watchman, whatever they call it. I forget what it's called. Neighborhood watch guy. Yeah. So he's being a neighborhood watch guy, a little bit overzealous. He sees some black kid walking around and he's kind of sort of following the black kid, even though the cops on the phone told him, don't follow the black kid. The black kid notices him. The black kid being Trayvon Martin notices him, goes up to George Zimmerman. And according to what we learned in court, according to what happened in court, Trayvon Martin approached George Zimmerman. George was following him, but Trayvon went and engaged with him and started beating up George Zimmerman. They're having a fist fight, and George is losing the fight. George pulls out his weapon, which he had on him, shoots Trayvon Martin. Trayvon dies. And all three of these guys end up getting off. Zimmerman got off. Daniel Penny got off. And Kyle Rittenhouse got off. Here's the things that you need to understand. First of all, it depends on what charge the prosecution decides to bring. So the state of Florida, the state of New York, and the state of Wisconsin each decide to bring a certain charge based on their state laws against these defendants. So it depends on what charge gets brought or charges get brought. Second, it depends on how the prosecution decides to build their case. So understand that this is not like AI against AI in a courtroom. It's not like my AI software against yours. These are human beings. Prosecutors are humans. They are attorneys. They just work for the government. Then you got defense attorneys that they work for individual people. They decide how they're going to build their case. Y'all remember Johnny Cochran? If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. Each lawyer decides how to build the case based on the information they have available, based on what they learn from their client, and then based on what they think the other side is going to do. And there's a whole game of chess that they're playing, and everything is decided by the jury, and the judge gets to decide which arguments you can make, which arguments you can't make, which witnesses can come on the stand, what evidence is admissible to the jury, what evidence is not admissible, how things can be argued, how things can't be argued. The judge is a person. The jury are 12 people. The prosecutor is a person. The defense attorney is a person. All of this is interpersonal dealings. It's all communication. It's all sales skills. And therefore, because of this, you cannot say this is the same as this, as the same as this, is the same as this, because in each case, each one of these elements that I just mentioned is different. Each one of them had a different judge. Each one of them had different prosecution. Each one of them had 12 different jurors. Each one of them had 12 different, not 12 different, but different defense attorneys. Each one of them had a different defendant. Each one of them had a different victim, whoever ended up losing their lives. And the background of that person and everybody who was there and what they say happened, what versus what didn't happen, what evidence is admissible in court, what evidence is not admissible. Even looking at Derek Chauvin with George Floyd in Minneapolis, all of these are variable because in every situation, all of these things are different. So we can't just say, well, this happened over here, so that means it's going to happen over there. No, sir. No, ma'am. That is not how the court system works. It's not how human dynamics work. It's kind of like I was just listening to this documentary this morning talking about couples who are swinger couples. So y'all know what swinging is. Go Google it. And it's kind of like if you it's like a husband goes to his wife. They've been married for 10 years and he says, I want to try swinging. And the wife enthusiastically says, okay, let's do it. And they start swinging. Then just because that husband who's been married for 10 years went to his wife and she said yes, doesn't mean if you've been married to your wife for 10 years and you go to her, she's going to be as enthusiastic as that wife because y'all ain't the same people. Do you understand? So just because it happened over here this way does not mean it's going to happen over there that way. Again, it's the juvenile way of thinking. The laws in every state are also unique, which means the way you decide to argue the case matters a big deal in how the case ends up working out. So we can't just put this black and white framing on everything. And court cases are what we call multivariate problems. Those of you not familiar with the term, let me explain very simply what it means. A multivariate problem is a problem or a situation, let's say. It's not even called a problem. Multivariate situation is a situation that involves several different variables, not just one. So again, it's not just he started it, is not just self-defense, is not just black versus white, is not just, oh, the kid didn't have the authority to tell the other kid to move, is not just he grabbed his backpack first, is not just he allegedly fought him the week before and beat him up, is not just the boys were allegedly bullies, is not any of those things on the surface, not any one of those things. This is the reason why a court case, especially a homicide court case, takes months to play out. Why does it take months? Even looking at the case with P. Diddy, what y'all call P. Diddy. I remember him as Puff Daddy when he first came out. But P. Diddy, his case is about to start about a month from now. How long he been in jail? Like a year? Why does it take so long? Why is it taking so long to even start his case? He's incarcerated. He hasn't even been found guilty of anything yet. He's just been sitting in jail for a year. Why has he been sitting in jail? Because the prosecution and the defense have needed time to put together their case so that they can argue. They got to get all this information, all these things that he's being charged with, going years back with 100 different witnesses, 100 different pieces the prosecution wants to bring, 100 different pieces the defense wants to bring. And then they're both thinking about what's the other side going to do so they can learn how to play chess against them and counteract what they're going to do. And I got to counter what they're going to do. And the whole time he's sitting in jail. I'm saying all this for all of you to help you understand you don't want to be in this situation. So that's why I said be smart rather than being tough, because being tough will land you in jail. It might give you credibility on a rap album, but it's going to lead to you end up in a box, incarcerated or deceased. You don't want to end up in this situation. And this is what Mr. Anthony, Carmelo Anthony, 17-year-old, he's dealing with this right now. He's incarcerated right now. Actually, he's not incarcerated. I guess he's being held. Technically, I guess we can say. He's being held because he has a bond. I believe his bond was $1 million. And his family's trying to raise the money to get him out of jail. Because right now he can't even leave because he ain't got the money. So that's why they're doing this GoFundMe right now. And they're going to need another GoFundMe because they got to pay his lawyer. This is the whole situation, folks. And what I also will tell you all on a logical level is that you don't want to have to give your money to a lawyer. We were just talking yesterday about investing, and especially those of you who have kids. If you have a kid who's under the age of 18, I'm sure most of you would love to have your kids be able to start out financially with a little bit of money in their pocket rather than how you probably started out was having no money in your pocket. You want your kid to start with some money in their pocket. Well, guess what you probably don't want to do is take some of that money that you would give to your kid and have to give it to a lawyer because you're in court. Right? I mean, I'm just guessing. So why would you want to give that money to a lawyer all behind you, keeping it real and defending yourself, quote unquote, because somebody else started it? You're not in third grade anymore. And in legal terms, just to reiterate this to you, that in the court, it is often asked the question, did the person who put the work in, the person who did use the deadly force, did you have a way of de-escalating the situation or exiting the situation before you decided to use deadly force? In other words, if you are carrying a gun, could you have just walked away? And if you didn't walk away, why did you not just walk away? Yes, I know you had a gun. Yes, I know we have stand your ground laws here. Yes, I know they started it, but could you have just walked away? Could you have just exited the situation and let it go? Or did you participate in the escalation of the situation by pulling your gun out and using it? And if they believe that you did, you may end up in jail. Even in a state that has a stand your ground law, like Florida, like Texas, like whatever other state. Any of you live in a state with a stand your ground law? Just because there's a stand your ground law does not mean you can just do whatever you want to somebody who bothered you. It does not mean that. Any of you who's ever taken any type of self-defense class, they probably taught you this. You ever took a weapons class, they probably teach you this. You talk to someone who is familiar with using weapons, they tell you this. If you pull out a deadly force weapon, even if you pull it out and don't even use it, if you pull it out, you're going to have to justify why you pulled it out. I remember I heard this guy say he's an open carrier of guns. And he said, if I ever pull my gun out, it's the last thing you're going to see. Otherwise, I'm not pulling it out. If I'm pulling it out, I'm going to take your life. If I don't want to take your life, I'm not pulling it out. He understands. All right, that's discipline. And again, some of you have been listening to too much rap music. All right, most of your favorite rappers rapping about killing people ain't never killed nobody. And they ain't going to kill nobody. And they got y'all thinking that that's what you're supposed to do just because somebody started with you under the guise of keeping it real and being tough. What I'm telling you is to be smart. Again, to save your money and to save your life, because and also just to not for nothing. Just because you pulled it out doesn't mean the person you're pulling it out on can't pull one out themselves. And unless you've been doing some target practice, you might miss. Now, what if they pull theirs out and they don't miss? Now, where are you? Now you're the dead one. And you shot first. So now, guess what? They're walking because you shot at them. So again, be smart. Don't be tough. Court cases, ladies and gentlemen, I already kind of talked on this. They don't play out on social media, even though a lot of people on social media are heavily engaged in what we have right now is an information war between two factions here, I guess we can say. You got one side who are trying to defend the white kid. You got one side trying to defend the black kid. And then you have some people in the middle who are just trying to look at this objectively, which is what I'm trying to do. But there's some of you listening to this right now who think that I'm not, because you don't like some of the things that I'm saying, because it may go against what you've decided to believe. And this is the information war. And does this matter? While I already told you that court cases don't play out on social media, does it matter what's happening on social media? The answer is hell yes, it does matter. And let me tell you why it matters. Y'all remember the George Floyd case in Minneapolis, right? Derek Chauvin, the cop, the knee on the neck guy. Do you think social media played a role in that outcome? I do. I think social media played a role. The day before they announced the verdict in that case, because that happened in what? That was in 2020 that the video went viral, right? It was around May 2020. The video went viral. And the verdict came out around April of 2021. So it took almost a year. Verdict came out in April of 2021. If you remember, the day before they announced the verdict, when the jury was about to announce the verdict, what they did in Minneapolis is that they put barricades and barriers around the entire courthouse and around the entire downtown area of Minneapolis. They put barriers around the whole thing. This is before they announced the verdict, because nobody knew what it was going to be, guilty or not guilty. And why they put barriers around the courthouse, excuse me. The reason they put barriers around the courthouse, because they knew that if a not guilty verdict got rendered in that Derek Chauvin case, several things are going to happen. First of all, Minneapolis is going to burn to the ground. So any of you who lives in Minneapolis, you know this. That city was going to burn to the ground had Derek Chauvin been found not guilty, number one. Number two, a bunch of other cities in America would have burned because there would have been riots all over the country had Derek Chauvin been found not guilty. That's number two. Number three, those jurors, had any of them gotten outed and doxxed, and they all would have gotten outed and doxxed, they would have had to fear for their lives, for the rest of their lives, because of that outcome. That's number three. And all of this was fueled by what was happening on social media. I mean, the reason we know about the George Floyd thing, because the video went viral, where? On social media. That's how we know about it. That's how we know about it. The only cases I can remember that had to do with violence like that became that went viral without social media was Rodney King and O.J. Simpson. Everything else, ones I remember, came from social media. It's Rodney King, O.J. Simpson. That's it. I mean, the Tupac video went viral, but that one never went to court because they never found the person who shot Tupac. And Tupac was the one putting the work in that video, and then he went and got shot 30 minutes later. Again, be smart, not tough. That whole thing would have went crazy had he gotten found not guilty. Derek Chauvin in Minneapolis. So this situation right here, it appears to me, the race hustlers on the internet, and race hustlers are people who they take any situation that has to do with race, or even a situation that doesn't really have to do with race, and they make it about race, and then they make it into a bigger thing to draw attention to themselves and their opinions, and they draw attention, and eventually they find a way to make money from this. I call these people race hustlers. There's a lot of them on the internet. They are all jumping in on this and arguing as best they can this whole self-defense, this stand your ground, this Daniel Penny, Kyle Rittenhouse, George Zimmerman. If they could get off, then the black kid can get off. They're all trying to build this up. And the reason that they're doing this is because it does matter. I'm telling y'all why it matters, because it's influencing a whole lot of people to think a certain way. And the more people you get influenced to think a certain way, like with the Derek Chauvin case, there's a whole bunch of people ready to destroy their town, their neighborhood, their community, and do anything reckless they could think of doing had Derek Chauvin got found not guilty, because they have been influenced by what? Social media, what they were hearing on social media every day. And there are race hustlers out there who I believe, this is just my theory, they are looking to do the exact same thing with this case right here. This black kid stabs a white kid. Allegedly, the white kid started it, and that means the black kid is quote unquote justified. And they're looking to build up a whole bunch of tension around the concept of race, because that's going to get people listening to them and what they have to say about it. And then if this kid gets found, if this black kid gets found guilty, he gets, he gets convicted in any way, shape, or form, then that's just going to lead to more problems. Are they trying to do this? Yes, they are. On top of that, something to think about. And I think they're going to get this to a speedy trial. I think it's going to happen pretty quickly. On top of that, how are they going to find an unbiased jury for this case? We got any Texas residents listening to this? How are they going to find an unbiased jury for this case? Just off of this happened last Thursday. It became a news story on Thursday, so I think it happened on Wednesday. How are they going to find 12 people who are unbiased and completely objective and have not been tainted by what they read, seen, and heard on the news and social media to be the jury for this case? How are they going to do it? They couldn't do it in the Derek Chauvin case. Did that guy get an unbiased jury for his trial? Even if you think he should have went to jail, did he get an unbiased jury for his trial? I'm just asking an open question. Did he? And the case was held in Minneapolis, the same place that it happened. Are you joking? How did he get an unbiased jury? There's no way he got an unbiased jury. Impossible. It's impossible he had an unbiased jury. This case right here is not as bad, but how are they going to get an unbiased jury given what's happening right now? And with all the people on social media stirring up these racial tensions on purpose, how are they going to do this? I don't know how they're going to do it. That could either mean that the kid has a higher likelihood of getting off because the jury is too tainted by what they're seeing on social media leaning one way, or he's more likely to go to jail because the jury is tainted in the other way. This is the problem. This is one of the biggest problems with the court system, is that you have to pick 12 people and you have to gauge how unbiased they possibly are. You don't know if they're lying to you or not when they're being interviewed for being on the jury. Some of them want to be on the jury just because they already have a conclusion, but they fake it as if they don't. And then you end up in this situation. And it's not like you can replace them with AI, because how are you going to get 12 different AIs with 12 different ways of thinking? They're all biased in some way, shape, or form. This is the reason why, folks, I tell you to stay out of court. Stay out of the legal system, because you don't want your freedom or your life hanging in the balance of variables like this shit that I'm explaining to you. Do y'all understand? And especially you men, and those of you ladies listening to this, you have men in your life, whether your sons or your boyfriends or husbands, tell them what I'm telling you. Be smart, not tough, because being tough will land you in court. And if you end up in court, you are gambling with your freedom. You're gambling with your life, and you got to pay money just to gamble. It's one thing to gamble where you might win your money. If you go to a casino and gamble, you put $5 down, you might walk away with 20. You go to court and gamble, you got to put $5 down. You don't get your money back. All you get to do is go home. And we're not talking $5. We're talking $50,000. We're talking $100,000, especially on a murder case. All right, what this is going to come down to is, again, how the prosecution decides to build their case, how the defense brings their case. jury selection is going to be huge in this, and we're never really going to know who do they have an actual unbiased juror. We'll never know. You'll never really know the influence of the jury and witness testimony under oath. So not, oh, I know somebody. I saw this dude post on social media the other day. I was talking to a coach at the school, and the coach at the school said these kids had a scuffle the week before, and now this kid was known to be a bully, the white kid, and now he approached the same black kid again, and I'm going to talk to him. And that was complete bullshit. This guy was lying. All right, this is the race hustler. That's what I'm talking about. That's the race hustle. And what this is going to come down to is witness testimony under oath, not somebody said it on Facebook, not something that somebody posted on TikTok or YouTube. Going into the courtroom, putting your hand on the Bible, swearing under oath that you're going to tell the whole truth, and then what you say then, when you have no choice but to tell the truth. Because if you get caught lying on the stand, that's perjury. You go to jail. So I want to hear what people say then, not what they're saying now. So all of you, again, do not be tainted by what you hear on the internet. People will say anything if they think they can influence people with what they're saying now. And they can. They are influencing people. So don't be fooled. All right, people are being influenced by this. With all that said, folks, let's open the floor up for discussion. I'm trying to make a judgment call here. If I can get through the next hour, 45 minutes to an hour, taking questions without taking a bathroom break, or should I just take one to be safe? Let me take a bathroom break to be safe. I am going to give me 90 seconds, folks. Let me go to the restroom real quick, and then we're going to open the floor for discussion. So if you got a question or comment, get it ready. Let me go to the restroom. I'll be right back after these messages. All right. I am back. Let's get to the questions in the comments. I don't see anything on Rumble, YouTube. Let's check over on Facebook. We'll come to TikTok last. That's usually where the most activity is. Didn't see anything on Instagram. By the way, my newest book is called The Sales Discipline System. This book just came out last Friday. You can get your copy of this at the link in my profile. I'm not doing this live to sell books. I'm not even talking about sales. But if you want to get that book, you can see it right there. You can get that book at the link in my profile. The book's free, just cover the shipping. So let's see what we got in the comments. I know I'm not going to see all the comments here, but I'm going to read as many as I can. So I'm going to say the person's name, then I'll read your comment. And I'm starting all the way at the top. So if you're leaving a comment right now, I'm not seeing it, but I will get to it. So let's see where we at. Mama Bear said he should have left. Who you talking about? The black kid? Cody said, I did not escalate the situation. I took care of the problem. Well, yeah, it depends on the situation. And if you end up in court, what you said sounds good on the internet. It sounds a little bit different in front of a judge. Georgia has a stand your ground law. Alabama has one. Okay. Makes sense. Let's see. Jordan Friedman, good morning to you. Says, smart man speaking facts. Thank you. I'd rather speak truth than facts, but I appreciate it. Cynthia said, always have to justify it. Yes, if you use deadly force, you better be able to justify it because the cops don't ignore a dead body. They'll ignore a punch in the face. They won't ignore a dead body. C. Webb, love this guy. Thank you. Let's do it. Said, be smart and free. Yeah, pretty much. That's right. Traditional said, rap music was in Boy's head when he stabbed Austin. Well, we don't know, but he took the action. So I'm not even gonna blame it on the rap music. And he got two parents. I listen to rap music, but I ain't never stabbed nobody. So he still has two parents. His parents should have more influence than that rap music. Hopefully it does. Melody said, my husband had to justify why when he was attacked by a dog that was being walked by a 75-pound teen. So what did he do? Did he shoot the dog? What did he do, Melody? And yeah, if he ended up shooting the dog or hurting the dog badly, then yeah, he still has to explain that in court. And the thing is, if you got to explain yourself in court, you got to hire a lawyer, you got to go to court. You're missing out on all the other things you could have been doing. The opportunity cost of all of that just because of that situation, and sometimes not even your fault. So yes, it's a screwed up situation. That's why I tell people stay out of the legal system. Legal system is screwed up in the United States of America, in case any of you didn't know. Even if you are innocent, it's a screwed up system. To Amber and Beyond, good morning. Thank you for the rose. Jake said there are three sides to all stories. Yes, well, what we're looking for is the truth, not the story. What we really want is the truth. That's the reason why when you get on the stand, they say the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Not the story, the truth. Angelina, good morning to you. DeMarcus Cousins said, all we had was social media then too, because yes, that's a good point. Yes, everybody was on the internet at that time, so it was a perfect storm. Black Day said, I think the fact that he M-worded George Floyd played a role in that. Well, that's what the jury decided. Jake said, what do you think? What happened? What I think? Melody said, you are so right. Thank you. Irma V, good morning. Kuto, good morning to you. Obi Jacobs, good morning. DeMarcus said the national media got a hold of Rodney King and OJ. Well, OJ was already famous. Rodney King was not famous. So Rodney King became famous because that one person shot a home video in the 90s. Had that video not come out, we would not know Rodney King. Let's see. Traditional said the black race hustlers are responsible for race division in this country. Well, they are stirring it up. I don't know if they started it. I don't know if I would give them credit for starting it, but they stir it up because it's part of their business model. I understand their business model, but I don't know if I can say they started it. Change takes time. Said no matter the stand your ground law in Texas, you are not about to bring a knife onto property. Well, it depends. Depends on the rules of that property. Depends on the laws of that property. Miss Glocky says, thank you for speaking facts. These people are arguing. This out here is so delulu. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens in court because we got to find out what actually happened. And that black kid, we'll see if he takes a stand. If he takes a stand, I don't know if he will take the stand. His lawyer might be smart to keep him off the stand. But then the witnesses are going to speak. I want to just see what they argue. So it depends on how they argue the case. Okay, so I see a bunch of you said that. Texas here, shout out to Texas. Change the venue, we'll see. We'll see if they change the venue. They probably can't do the case in Frisco because there's too many people that know them and know the community. They have to move the case. The same way in Minneapolis, they didn't do it. They should have moved that case to somewhere else. They should have moved the whole trial to a different town, but they didn't do it. Obi, good morning to you. Some people say no, he didn't, and you're okay with that. With Derek Chauvin not getting a fair trial, I don't think he had an unbiased jury. He absolutely did not have an unbiased jury. Now, who knows? Maybe he would have got the same outcome anywhere, but he deserved an unbiased jury. That's the law. Lou said, just like the Trump case in New York. Yeah, well, that was a railroad. We knew what the Trump case was. We knew what that was going to be before it even started. And it said, bring it to South Texas. Well, we'll see, because they're going to have to argue that. The prosecution may argue it. The defense may argue it. But somebody has to bring it up. So we will see. Casey said he'll definitely be guilty in Collin County, so it's probably intentional. We'll see. Or anywhere that if the prosecutor or the lawyer, if the lawyers believe what you just said there, Casey, the case will not happen there. So anywhere they think that's going to happen, it won't happen. Ramon, what's a Bonham case? I don't know what you're talking about. Let's do it. Says same with R. Kelly. Yeah, R. Kelly. His wasn't a violent case. That's why I didn't bring it up. Yeah, change of venue. Yes. James Collins, good morning. Erica, congrats on the badge. Jonathan said he going to jail and you know it. Well, he's in jail already. Now, whether he gets convicted, that's a different story. I would not draw any conclusions just yet. It depends on a lot of factors. And we need to know what actually happened first. We don't know what actually happened yet. We only know a few little things, and it doesn't give us enough detail. Perrian said, I was a foreman, and you'll be surprised how focused you are with the evidence. What do you mean by that? Mercy said, I'm in Texas. I see right through the internet tactics. We are out there. Well, Mercy, there are other people in Texas who, whatever thought you have about the case, there are people with the exact opposite thought. That's the issue. Let's see. Sweet Steph said, life is a total gamble. Well, in some ways, yes, but if you end up in court, you are intentionally gambling. That's the problem. Erica, thanks for telling people to tap the screen. We're at 28,000 likes, folks. Can we get to 30? Lisa said, I was always taught growing up, takes more of a man to walk away from a fight than to fight. In certain cases, that is true. In certain cases, you should fight. In certain cases, you should be smart enough to not fight. It depends on the situation. As Sun Tzu says in The Art of War, if you are not in danger, do not fight. Courtney said, any word on when a press conference can be expected from police? I think they're still trying to gather more details of what actually happened. I think they're trying to gather, quote unquote, the facts. And they're probably talking to witnesses right now. They need it because that's what detectives do. As soon as something happens, the first thing you need to do is gather as many witnesses as possible and get as raw an account of what happened as possible before people get tainted by time and changing their stories. They want to get immediate statements from witnesses as quickly as possible. So they're probably still gathering statements from witnesses, which is smart. They shouldn't come out and just make a statement because they don't have enough information yet. User said, choices we make define our lives. That is very true. And I read that comment. You said, bring this out. You posted like 5 times. Samantha said, doesn't Carmelo's attorney get to pick some of the jurors? Here's the way jury selection works. The way jury selection works is that some person who might be in the jury comes up and they get asked a bunch of questions. And the defense attorney is on one side and the prosecution attorneys, they're on the other side. And if either one of them doesn't like a possible jury member, they can strike that member and that person is out of the pool. They can't become. The thing is, you only get a certain number of strikes. So let's just say you get 5 strikes. So let's say that you need 12 people on the jury, right? So let's say there are 50 possible jurors and they're all in front of the judge and they're all coming up one by one and each side is looking at each juror and the prosecution says, I don't like this person. Or I don't like that person. So let's say they strike 2 people. So now they only have 8 strikes left. They can't strike everybody that they don't like. They can only strike 8 people. And the defense has the same thing. They can only strike 10 people total. And the prosecution used 2. They only have 8 left. So they have to pick and choose which jurors they strike. And there are sometimes they have to kind of just take it. They got to hold their nose and just say, all right, we're going to go with this person. They look kind of questionable, but we don't have any more strikes left or we want to hold on to our strikes until there's one that we absolutely got to get out of there. Let's say somebody comes up there and they say, I'm a supporter of BLM. Well, if you're the defense attorney, you probably don't want them on the jury, right? So you probably want to strike them. But what if you don't have any more strikes left? And now somebody comes up and says, I'm a supporter of BLM. And now they got to be on the jury because you couldn't kick them out. And the prosecution wants them. Or the other side, flip it around. The defense attorney says, I want the BLM person. The prosecution doesn't want them, but the prosecution has ran out of strikes. Now they got to accept that person. So that's the way it works. You're kind of like, it's like playing cards. You don't know what card is coming up next. So you got to decide, does it make sense to throw this card in or to hold this card? That's the way it works in jury selection. So both sides get to suggest a juror, but the other side does also have a chance to strike off a juror. So it depends. That's the whole gamble. Again, why would you want your life on the line in this situation? That's the whole point. You don't want your freedom on the line in a situation like this where everything is out of your hands. Because once you get in court, the lawyers take over and you're the one who did it. Carmelo, he don't get to say anything. All right. 99% of what gets said in the courtroom will not be said by him. And he's the one who did it. And the other person is dead. So all these people are deciding his life and he doesn't get to say a damn thing. You don't want to be in that situation, even if you can afford a lawyer. Tay from this said, I don't understand before and they never knew. Okay. Well, you probably don't want to brag about that if you're even telling the truth. Hope said, the sad truth is both these young men have such a bright future. Yeah, I think that's true. Lisa said, is he a lawyer? I am not a lawyer, but I understand how to break things down and explain them. That's my superpower. So we just happen to be talking about this today. I am not in Texas. I live in Miami, Florida. Where am I? All right, here I am. All right, I'm just trying to follow the comments here. Tesha said they have a video. Can they help? Well, if somebody has a video, we probably would have seen it by now. I don't think there's video. Yes, he said, was he allowed to bring the weapon? I don't know. But in the bigger picture is really immaterial, honestly. And the bigger outcome doesn't matter because it's not like he's going to court because he brought a weapon to school. He's going to court because he used that weapon and somebody's dead. That's why he's going to court. The court case is not about did you bring a weapon to school and was it allowed or not? That's kind of is a much a smaller piece of this. Scott Grimes said, "Do I think it was self-defense? It depends on how you define self-defense." I think I spent a lot of time explaining that, Scott. I don't know if you heard it when I was talking about it. Nico said, taking someone's life is never justified. Don't allow anger to dictate your actions. Be smart. Nico, I would push back on that. There is a time when it's justified. Someone else is trying to take your life. Would you take their life? I would. So it is justified at certain points. So it depends. I would never say never on these. Somebody breaks into your house with a gun and you have a gun and you pull it out and shoot the assailant, the intruder, that is justified. Now, again, you still got to go to court, but I believe it's justified. Phantom said, how do you feel about the use of resisting arrest when there is a lack of predicate crime? Well, that is nothing on the topic, Phantom, but to quickly answer your question, if a cop says you're under arrest, then comply with the police officer. Not complying with the police officer, you end up in George Floyd's situation, which is stupid. If George Floyd had survived and he asked me what I thought about what happened to him, I say, you idiot, what the hell are you doing resisting arrest? You're on drugs. It's one of you and it's four of them. What the hell do you think you were going to do? That's what I would say to George Floyd had he survived. So do not resist arrest. Cop tells you you're under arrest. That's it. Go to court, call your lawyer, and get your freedom back. But don't fight the cops. You're not going to win. They all got guns. Cops usually got 2 guns on them. They got pepper spray. They got mace. And as soon as you start fighting physically against them, they pretty much have open seat. They got open carte blanche to do whatever they want to do to you to get you to calm down, let's just say, for lack of a better term. Family said, what about the fact that Anthony took the weapon with him? Well, I don't think that has anything to do with it. Again, it's immaterial to the bigger picture, which is he used it and somebody's dead. What was he doing at school with a knife in the first place? It depends on if that's allowed or not. But again, he's not on trial for bringing a knife to school. He's on trial for using the knife. Nana said he claimed to be bullied much like school shooters. No, I didn't hear him say anything, Nana. I didn't hear him say anything. What you heard is the internet said he was bullied. But that is not, we can't accept anything you hear on the internet. Carver, Miss Pretty Feet, thanks for the follows. Nia Wood said, do you think he will do time? Well, he's kind of doing time right now. My answer is it depends on how they decide to approach the case. That depends on what the prosecution does and what the defense does. So we don't know yet. We don't have enough information, folks. My official word is we don't have enough information. Please do not jump to conclusions based on shit you hear on the internet. Most of these people are lying and they don't know what they're talking about. They're throwing things out there because they want to push the public in a certain direction. Mickey Dash said, apparently there's a lot of cell phone video. I'm sure there has to be some, maybe there may be some cell phone video. The problem is, Mickey, a lot of cell phone video might only be after the fact, because just think about it. Just think if you're at an event, right? And you don't have your phone out because you're just sitting there chilling. And these two people, so the white kid walks up to the black kid and says, you got to get up from the seat. That's not worthy of pulling your phone out. It's not like they're fighting. He just says something to him. You don't even know if it's a problem yet. The black kid says, allegedly the black kid said, touch me and see what happens. All right, that's what allegedly the black kid said to the white kid. Touch me and see what happens. Then the white kid actually touched him. Either he touched him or he touched the bag. Then the black kid pulls out the knife and stabs him. By the time you realize that there's something happening and you pull out your phone, it's already over. So there may be video, but the video might be after the fact. And my video might just be the kid bleeding out after he got stabbed. But who will be filming these two having a conversation? Because again, it's not like they had this long fist fight and then he pulled the knife out. He pulled the knife out after a couple words got exchanged, but it might not even look like a confrontation. So why would anybody be filming that in the first place? So maybe there's film, but I don't think it will be a lot of it. And that film may never come out. User said emotions can't play a role in court decisions. Oh, sure they can. The jurors are human. Humans have emotions. Nana says scenes premeditated. Based on what? Nana, we don't have enough information to even draw that conclusion. Mike said, wouldn't you have to be in fear of your life for that? Well, you had to prove that you were in fear of your life. Now, whether you were actually in fear or not is a different thing, but can you prove it? And the court of law is not about what you know, it's about what you can prove. And what you can prove is based on the quality of your lawyer and their understanding of the laws in the jurisdiction in which you are in court. So it means several different things, but just saying it doesn't mean anything. Kingsley said, Black MAGA going around stirring up racial hatred. Well, everybody's saying that about whatever group they disagree with. Family is everything. In order to use deadly force, family is everything. Said, in order to use deadly force, Don't your life have to be in danger? Again, you have to prove that you felt like your life was in danger. It doesn't actually have to be in danger. You have to prove that that's the way you were seeing the situation. Then you have to convince the jury that that is actually what you saw. That what you say and what you prove are two different things. That's what I got to understand about the law. You can say whatever you want, but if you can't prove it in court, then it doesn't matter that you said it. That's the reason why you don't want to be in court, because the jury, these 12 people who you don't know, are deciding your fate based on what you say and your ability to convince them, your lawyer's ability to convince them. So it's not even you convincing them, your lawyer got to convince them. That's why you got to have a good lawyer, and a good lawyer ain't free. All right, so all of this becomes a situation. That's why you don't want to end up in this situation. Bad reputation said morals and law are not the same. That is very true. Nana said he bought a knife to a fist fight. I don't think it was a fist fight. I don't think any fists got thrown, but again, we don't know enough yet. We don't know what happened yet. Ron said, why they don't fix the system? What system are you talking about? The legal system? All right. Do you see what happens when someone tries to fix a governmental system? All right. Look at Elon Musk and Donald Trump. The blowback they're getting right now is what happens when you try to fix a system, especially one as bureaucratic as the government. VJ said if he had time to retrieve his knife, he had time to leave the situation that he was already asked to. Technically, he didn't retrieve the knife. The knife was already in the bag. So when the kid approached him, according to what we do know, the kid approached him and said, move. And the white kid said, move. The black kid said, touch me and see what happens. And he already had his hand in the bag. So he's holding the knife like this in the bag. He said, touch me and see what happens. The kid touched him. Boom, he pulls out the knife. So the time, he didn't have to retrieve the knife. He already had it with him. So could he have walked away? Yes. But at the same time, if he is claiming self-defense, then maybe he doesn't walk away. Could he have walked away? Yes. Everybody can walk away. All right, there are plenty of situations in life when people don't walk away, but they could have walked away. Doesn't mean that you're wrong for not walking away. And in a court of law, it depends on what you argue and what you can prove. So again, it's not about our personal judgments of what he could have done. It's about what can be proved in the court of law. That's what this comes down to, folks. It's not about what social media decides. Yes, he said, was he allowed to have that weapon on him in the event? I already addressed that. It doesn't matter. At this point, it doesn't matter. You just said, I thought it was against the law to bring weapons to school. Well, what school, what state, what district? Every school, state, and district has their own laws. 303 said, what's the topic today? We're talking about legalities of using violent force. Dante said, what is your take on it? Have you not been listening to the last hour? I gave you my take. I'm not drawing a conclusion yet because the conclusion will be decided in court, and we don't have 90% of the facts yet. We got about 10% of the story right now. The other 90%, nobody knows. So you cannot draw a conclusion with 10% of the information. So I need to hear people, first of all, state what they absolutely are attesting to. They are willing to testify in court, meaning they've given sworn statements to the police. The police hadn't even done a press conference yet saying what statements they have. We need to see that before we have, at that point, we'll have maybe 25% of the information. Then at the trial, we'll get the rest of it. Right now, we only got 10%. So nobody should be drawing any conclusions right now. If you're a critical thinker, you may have an opinion, but you should not be drawing any conclusions. Family is everything. So I love how you see things in life. You're awesome. Thank you. Starsky said, do you think he should take a plea deal better? Well, we haven't even gotten that far yet. He might not even end up with the charge that he has. Right now, they've given him a first-degree murder charge, but it may not end up that. They may change the charge. Again, the court doesn't even have enough information to decide what to charge this kid yet. They charged him immediately because they knew what happened, but they still got to get more information too. Katie said, here in the area where it happened, problem is he had a weapon. How so, Katie? I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a weapon. It's not against the law to have a weapon. I mean, it's the reason why we had a Second Amendment. Now, where you had the weapon, what you did with it, and what you can prove or gets proven against you that you intended to do with it, those can make it a problem, but those have to be proven in court. Susan said, how can we find out what actually happened? Well, I'll give you two answers. On the one hand, it's what people go to court and testify. All right, go to court, put your hand on the Bible and testify. But just because someone puts their hand on the Bible and testifies does not mean they're telling you the truth. They could be lying too, and they might get away with it. And if you don't know the details of the Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman trial, please go look at the documentary called The Trayvon Hoax, and you can find out about how somebody can lie on the stand and get away with it. And many people have lied on the stand. I'm just giving you an example. In the bigger picture, Susan, we'll never really know what happened unless you see something with your own two eyes. You know how the saying is, believe half of what you see and none of what you hear? I go by that. We will never really know what really happened because we only have one survivor of the story left to tell what happened. And he has a vested interest in telling a certain version of that story. Do you understand? So he stabbed somebody. That kid's dead. He has a vested interest in framing that story in such a way that makes him look innocent because right now his life is on the line. And the kid who got stabbed, he can't tell his version of the story because he ain't here to tell it. His brother was there, and his brother has a version of the story that, again, is framed based on his bias, which is, I just watched my brother get stabbed to death. What story do you think he's going to tell? So will we ever know the actual truth from someone who was objectively watching the situation? No, we'll never know. So we're just going to have to go off of what we decide to accept as truth. That's really what it comes down to. Only thing you actually know to be true are things that you personally experience and see with your own eyes. If you did not personally see it yourself, you are deciding to accept a story. That applies to any story you ever heard in your life, including history. All of history is what you have decided to accept as truth. You don't actually know something's true unless you saw it yourself. All 2022 says, is that your book behind you? Yes. All the books that you can see are all my books. All of these are mine. You get my latest book. It's called The Sales Discipline System. This book right here. The eight key disciplines to top salespeople to use in any industry to say goodbye to up and down months and inconsistent habits. Is specifically for the salespeople out there. Those of you who have sales teams. This book right here, you can get it at the link in my profile. Family is everything. Said, what about Zimmerman? Was that a double standard with this case? No, because they were in two different states. And again, I explained this earlier. Every court case has a unique judge, a unique prosecution, a unique set of actual accepted facts, unique laws on the books in every jurisdiction, and unique interpretations of those laws by the judge, by the jury, by the prosecution, and by the defense team. And there's a different defense person, defendant, and a different side that's being prosecuted. So every case is unique. Even if the situation looks the same, the case is not the same. Yes. In Frisco, what happened is a black kid stabbed a white kid over a dispute over a seat, allegedly at a school event. Susan said, can we see police reports before the trial? If the police put them out, we can. The police haven't said anything yet as far as an official statement. Only thing the police said so far is that anything you've seen so far is not real. Because a bunch of people put out fake reports, fake police reports. So any of those police reports you thought you saw on the internet, those are all fake. And the only thing the Frisco police have said so far is that anything that you heard we said, we didn't say. So that's all we know right now. Can we get the 50,000 likes, please, folks? We're at 45,000. Thank you to my moderators for pushing the likes. Millward Diversion, good morning. Thank you for the follow. Troy Bound said, nowhere they could have gone would they have found an unbiased jury. I think they could have tried. Troy, that's what I think they could have tried. They didn't even try. Q's the name. Thanks for sharing. Derek Valdix, thanks. No video. No, there's no video. Not that we know of. If there is, we don't know about it. Katie said he still shouldn't have had a knife. Katie, I'm going to challenge that. Why not? What's wrong with having a knife? I can walk around with a knife right now if I want to. It doesn't make me wrong to have it. It depends on what I do with it that makes it good or bad. You can use a knife to eat some steak. You can also use a knife to kill somebody. Depends on how you use it. Same thing with a gun. User says stabbing of an individual is intentional. But I would say most of the time it is. You could technically stab somebody by accident. Same way you could shoot somebody by accident. And again, just because something is intentional does not mean it is legally wrong. If you are trying to shoot me and I pull out my knife and stab you, okay, it's intentional. I stabbed you on purpose, yes. But am I justified? Yes, I am. So just because something's intentional does not make it wrong. And how many times are you going to leave the same comment? You said it like 30 times. Obi said, how are we supposed to believe the twin lied 2 times in the statements or one time I believe? I don't know what you're talking about. First of all, the twin, we haven't heard his official statement to police. What you say to the news network or to the internet is not the same as what you say to a cop. You give a false statement to a cop, you can go to jail. You give a false statement to a TV reporter, so what? What are they going to do? They can't do anything to you. So what the twin said to the news network is not an official statement. Official statement is one where you understand if you lie to us, you're going to jail. That's a whole different level of stakes. And we don't know what he said to them. We know what he said to the news. And I don't care about what he said to the news. I want to know what he says with his hand on the Bible, swearing under oath in a court of law. That's what I want to hear. I don't care about the internet. Ron Orndorff said, you have a weapon, you cannot provoke the situation at any time. If you have a weapon, you cannot provoke the situation at any time. Not quite sure what you're saying there, but just because I have a weapon doesn't mean it depends on the situation. I mean, that's a kind of a too blankety of a statement there, what you're saying. It depends on the situation. Iman said, quit defending what he did. Of course, here we go. So now somebody thinks I'm defending what he did. All I'm talking about is what we actually know to be true right now, which is not that much, and the legalities based on what we do know. I'm not defending anybody. Obi said the kid wouldn't be able to even spit a truth. He lost his brother. He could have guilt. Possibly he could. Again, that's why I said he has a biased view of it because he just watched his brother get stabbed to death. So again, what do you think he's going to say? That's why we'll never know the real truth, because the two people involved are not both around right now to speak for themselves. If they were both around, let's say the kid didn't die. He got stabbed, but he didn't die, and they both could talk. I will listen to both of them give their version of what happened, and then I would try to put together between what they both said, what's the actual truth here, because neither one of them tell me the actual truth. They're both telling me their version of what happened. And both of them have a vested interest to make themselves sound more innocent than they probably are. That's the way it happens when there's a conflict between two people. So if I go and get in a fight with somebody at the mall, my version of the story is going to make it sound like I'm innocent, and that guy's version is going to make it sound like he's innocent. What's the actual truth? It's somewhere in between the two stories. And again, where are we going to get that from if we don't have an objective eyewitness, which we probably don't have? So what do we do in this situation? This is going to require your best judgment. Sarsky said, would you recommend him take a plea deal if you were his lawyer or father? Well, they haven't offered him a plea deal, so you can't take something that's not offered to you, Starsky. Again, we don't even know what the actual charge is going to be yet. He hasn't even been arraigned yet. So arraignment is when you go to court and they tell you the official charge, and then you decide, all right, you're going to hire a lawyer. What are we going to do next? None of that has happened yet. So it's too early for any of this. Lou Dija Baby said he warned him. Okay, warning somebody doesn't mean you can do whatever you warned. It's like if I walk up to somebody in the street right now, or I go to a grocery store and I walk up to a random person and say, hey, if you say a word to me, if you say anything to me, I'm going to shoot you. And they say, what are you talking about? And I just shoot them. Okay, I warned you. Does that mean it's okay? Again, where do you all get your logic from? Some of you just have some, there's not even you all who are in here. It's not personal against any of you, but I notice a lot of people using these same frames. Some of you have some very warped logic that is not actually logical. Warning someone does not make anything you do after the warning justified. Just join. Please recap the discussion. Well, Crystal, what I would suggest you do is go to YouTube and watch the whole thing. But what we're talking about is the black kid who stabbed the white kid in the state of Texas and the legalities of the situation based on a little bit of information that we have at this point. Hunter Gant said, thoughts on people saying the kid who was stabbed was wanted beforehand. I don't care what people are saying. I don't trust. Very rarely do I trust things I hear on the internet, especially a situation like this one where it's a bunch of he say, she say, and a bunch of people who were not there trying to tell you that something happened when they don't know and they can't prove it. If you can't prove what you're claiming, then I don't believe you. When it comes to the internet, that's my whole thing. I believe half of what I see, none of what I hear, and anything you assert, I want a source. Give me a source. Prove that it happened. So y'all heard this story about the basketball player, Anthony Edwards. He plays for the Minnesota Timberwolves, speaking of Minneapolis. And there's a story that came out a few days ago, maybe a week ago, because he has like 4 baby moms. So he had another kid with some other chick now. And allegedly, he told the judge, that instead of paying $5,000 a month for child support for this kid for 18 years, he just wants to give the woman the entire lump sum of like $1,080,000 right now to pay off the whole 18 years up front. Allegedly, that was the story. Now, did that actually happen? Every time I saw somebody post it, I left a comment. I said, what's your source? Post the proof. Post the link to a source that actually says this happened. And no one's posted a source yet. So this is kind of like conjecture. Everybody's saying that it happened. And I saw Boyce Watkins made a video about it. And I listened to what he had to say about it, if it's true. But no one has actually proven this to be true. So I need to hear Anthony Edwards say out of his mouth, yes, I paid that woman $1 million. $1,080,000 to pay out child support. I haven't heard him confirm that this actually happened. I haven't seen any type of court document that said that it happened, but everybody's talking about it as if it's true. Like, do you have proof that this happened? So anytime you hear somebody on the internet telling you something happened, the first thing you need to ask them is, how do you know and where's the proof? Where's the proof of what you are saying? And when you start asking that question, you're going to realize that 80% of the shit you hear on the internet is bullshit, and people are just making up stuff to draw engagement and clicks, and they don't even have a source for the thing that they're claiming occurred. So if all you start using that frame, you'll start believing less nonsense. Keenum, you got up late. Now, shout out to the people waking up late. Susan said, the choices we make define our lives. Yes, they do. TJ said, innocent until proven guilty. Why doesn't the public and media understand this? Duke lacrosse case. Yes. And 1,000 other cases, TJC. You are innocent until proven guilty. That is correct. Now, people aren't really saying that about this kid simply because he admitted to stabbing a kid. So that's the reason why nobody's saying that. But right now, he is technically innocent. He's just being held on bond, and he has to come up with the money to get out of jail. And I think his family's going to raise the money through GoFundMe to bail him out. But now he still has this. He has a murder case hanging over his head until he goes to trial. I think this is going to happen pretty quick, though. I think he'll go to trial before the year's up. My guess. Daisy Cakes, thank you for the follow. All right, let's see where we are comment-wise. I'm trying to catch up on the comments. I'm almost caught up. Where was I? Not there yet. More. All right. I spoke too soon. Sometimes I say I'm almost caught up, and then I see how far away I am. I'm not caught up yet. Where am I? All right, so many comments that I didn't eat. All right, so I had to skip a bunch of comments because TikTok did this to me. Let's continue. Morgan, stay-at-home mom, says life wasn't being taken or threatened. That's where it's going to be rough. Yes, exactly. That's the biggest challenge he has, based on what we know right now, is that his life wasn't being threatened, but he took somebody else's life and he used violent force to do it. It's not like it was an accident. He stabbed the kid in the heart. That's a tough one. So his lawyer's got a lot of work to do, regardless of what anybody thinks about why he did it. Shelby said, you have to prove your life is threatened via, generally that law applies everywhere. Anywhere you're claiming self-defense. Self-defense applies. There are self-defense laws everywhere in America. Every state, even if they don't have a quote-unquote stands your ground law, every state has some form of self-defense. But the general law on self-defense is that you cannot just do something if you could have gotten away. If you could have just walked away, but then you shot him anyway, that's not justifiable. You probably might end up going to jail. You do that. So again, you have to prove that you had no choice but to do what you did. If you use violent force, deadly force, you must prove that you did not have another option. And if you can't prove that, you may end up in jail. Ron said, too many people want to litigate the case at the scene. Well, people are litigating the case on the internet. They weren't at the scene. Most people are not in Frisco, Texas. They weren't at this high school when it happened. They're just getting on the internet talking because, again, it draws attention. Sharon, thank you for the gift. Mickey Dash said, an attending parent has stated the police took cell phones from the kids who took video. Right, which is why we haven't seen the video. It makes perfect sense. That makes sense. I don't know that to be true, Mickey, but that would make sense if it did happen. Therion says, does self-defense go out the window if you're breaking the law by bringing a weapon on school ground? No, it does not. Still self-defense again. It depends on if there is a law to bring a weapon on school grounds. So let's just say I got a classmate at school, right? Therion. Let's say I got a classmate, right? And I know that they said that. And I also know that it's illegal to bring a knife on school grounds. But I need to go to school tomorrow. I'm still going to go to school. What would you do? So if I reasonably believe that this kid is actually going to follow through on his threat and kill me if I come to school tomorrow, and I am going to school, but I also know it's illegal to bring a weapon to school, what you going to do? Just show up to school with no weapon and hope that he was lying if you believe him? Or are you going to bring a weapon yourself and violate one law to make sure you don't lose your life? I'm bringing a weapon. And if I need to kill this kid to save my own life, I will pay the price of violating the law or bringing my weapon on campus because my life is more important than violating the law. So again, there's a continuum here. There's a continuum of which laws am I breaking and why am I breaking them? It's kind of like if you're driving in your car and somebody's trying to run you off the road. They're in a pickup truck, you're in a Tesla, or let's not say a Tesla, a smart car, and they're trying to run you off the road. And to get away from this person trying to run you off the road, you run through 3 red lights. So did you technically break the law or break the rules by running through the red lights? Yes, but you ran through the red lights to save your own life. So is it okay? Is it justifiable? The answer is yes, it is. So again, just because you broke a rule or a law does not necessarily mean that you are wrong. It depends on why you did it and the circumstances around it. So I will very gladly break a law or violate a governmental rule if the thing that I'm doing it for is it supersedes the law or the rule that I'm breaking. So again, this is not black and white, folks. This is what we call a multivariate situation. There are many different variables that must be factored in. It's not a black and white, just one thing. Troy said, depends on the size of the knife. And somewhat it does. Somewhat you are correct. And in other aspects of the case, it really doesn't, because it's a deadly weapon, and he used it as a deadly weapon. It's not like he just started waving it around and said, I'm going to defend myself. He actually used it as a deadly weapon. So a baseball bat can become a deadly weapon depending on how you use it. Morgan said he hasn't said he was bullied. People have. They don't go to the same school. Well, we don't know yet. Morgan, we do know they didn't go to the same school. That we do know to be true. But, I mean, that's generally immaterial here, because they might have still known each other and have had engagements in the past. We don't know. All we know is what people are saying on the internet. And again, believe half of what you see, none of what you hear on the internet, especially on a racial topic where everybody is very emotional. Do not believe what you hear. Susan, thank you for the follow. Hurricane said, I see everyone focused on Carmelo, but what gave Austin the right to forcefully make someone move? Well, Hurricane, people are focused on Carmelo because he's the only one who's still alive, and he's the one who took the life. So he deserves the focus. Doesn't mean that he's wrong. At least not yet. But he deserves the focus. He's the one who's alive. Same way that when George Floyd died, everyone focused on the cop. Why? Because he's the one who's still alive. And he did it. So you get the focus. That's what comes with the game. You take somebody's life and you're still alive, everybody's going to focus on you. What gave Austin the right to forcefully make somebody move? Well, their question contains a presumption. We don't know if that's what actually happened. That's what we heard. We don't know if it's true. Jennifer Sperlin, thank you for the follow. Ron said, if he was bullied, it doesn't help Carmelo's case. Well, we'll see. We don't know yet. Dawn says, still trying to figure out why they released his mugshot. Well, that's a public record situation, Dawn. If you get arrested, your mugshot is public record. So you can go online and find a mugshot of anyone who's been arrested. If you know their name, you can find it. Morgan said they took everyone's phones that were there. There's video footage like security camera. Well, we'll see. But they were under a tent. So whatever happened might have been hidden by the tent. So we don't know. Morgan, yes, you're correct. Not still trial. We're still waiting. Ron said that statement alone negates self-defense. No, it doesn't. Unless it's an official statement to police, nothing negates self-defense. It depends on the official statement to the police, and it also mitigating factors. A lawyer can argue in court that, hey, my client said what he said because he was scared in the moment, and therefore he wants to recant his statement. Does that work in court? Yes, it does. So we don't know yet. All right, can we get to 60,000 likes here, folks? Troy said if there was film, it would definitely be out already. Not necessarily. According to what a few people here have said, which sounds reasonable, the cops gathered up all the kids who were there. Because what happens in cases like this, something like this happens in a closed-in space, especially with kids, minors, is that the cops can lock down the entire venue, which they probably did. They locked the entire venue down. So when they lock the venue down, nobody can come in and nobody can go out. So all they did was get all the kids who were around there, and they took, if they did this, and it sounds reasonable that they would, they took every cell phone of every kid who was around there, and they have all the evidence in police custody. That's the reason why we haven't seen the videos yet, because it can't possibly leak. If they let the kids go home with their phones, then I'm sure at least one of those kids will leak the video. But if they took everybody's phone, the kid can't leak the video because the cops have all the video. So that makes perfect sense to me. It's been 5 days. We haven't seen video yet. There's a reason for that. If there's a bunch of kids around, they all got phones, and somebody probably filmed something, even if it was the aftermath, we haven't seen anything simply because the cops have it and they're not letting it out. So the cops are actually doing their job properly. So I believe there is some form of video. And Troy, you're mistaken. That would happen if you had a bunch of adults, because you can't kind of force adults into compliance the way you can force kids into compliance. So when the cops come and lock down a school, the kids pretty much did what the cops told them to do, which is everybody give me your phone. And none of them had enough time to think, well, let me email this to somebody or text it to somebody or something like that. They probably didn't have time to think about that because they're all standing there in shock like, yo, I just watched a kid get stabbed right in front of me. It's not like this is an everyday thing. Kim Gore said, was Carmelo suspended from school that day? He went to a different one than Austin. I don't know. And that will play a role in the case in some way, but I don't think it's that big of a factor. Again, we don't know yet. We'll see. User said only facts should be introduced. Well, here's the issue, user. In the world we live in today, we can't agree on the facts. That's the reason why I said, unless you were there and you saw it yourself, we'll never know what really happened. We're only going to know what we get told. And even though somebody told you something, doesn't mean it's the truth. That's why you believe half of what you see and none of what you hear. As a matter of fact, you shouldn't even be that. You should believe like a quarter of what you see, and anything you hear, you should probably believe a quarter of it. You should believe the opposite of it, because it's probably a lie. Susan said, if he felt like his life was in danger, why would he tell him to make a move? Well, that's a good question. He's going to have to answer that one in court. It's a good question, Susan. His lawyer's going to have to prep him for that one. Or his lawyer's going to have to prep himself for that one, because that is going to be asked in court and he's going to have to answer it. The lawyer, that is. I don't know if this kid's going to get on the stand. He's 17. I don't know if he's going to get on the stand. I'm just thinking, just knowing very little right now, if I'm his defense attorney, I'm not letting him get on the stand. He's doing the same thing OJ did. Same thing Derek Chauvin did. Same thing George Zimmerman did. And pleading the fifth. They all plead the fifth. You don't want to get on the stand in that case. Mikey said, kids that were already videoing the event could turn the camera as soon as they saw Austin approach. Again, if you're in high school, Mikey, I don't know if it's Mikey or Mickey. If you're in high school and you see one kid walk up to another kid, why would you start filming it? High school kids talk to each other all the time. So you're going to film every single interaction you see happening? What reason do you have to film that? So that sounds like a good idea on the surface until you think about it for about 5 seconds, and it doesn't make sense. And anyway, even if they did film it, the video is in police custody. That's why we haven't seen it. Hurricane said, if he needed to move, Austin should have gotten the coach to make him move. Nah, that sounds good when people are talking about it and trying to make themselves sound reasonable. But again, when you're in high school, if you see a kid sitting in the seat he's not supposed to be and it belongs to your group, are you going to go get a teacher to do it, or are you going to approach the kid and say, yo, you ain't supposed to sit here? And most of the time, that's good enough. 99% of the time, that works. So that sounds good when people are, when you all are making these rational sounding comments. But again, in a reasonable life situation, is that what a high school kid is going to do? The answer is no. And when you were in high school, is that what you did? Did you go get a teacher? If you wanted to say something to another student, did you go get a teacher to say it, or did you just say something to the student? Because 99% of the time, you knew they weren't going to pull out a knife and stab you for saying it. So cut it out. Nice try, but no. Heather said, in your opinion, should this trial be streamed live? I would like every trial to be streamed live. I would like every trial to be streamed live, but they're not all like that. And it depends on the laws of the state, by the way, also. So like Trump's cases in New York, they are allowed to not let it get streamed. It would have hurt their case, the prosecution, had they been streaming it, because Trump has too many fans. Now, this one in Texas, we'll see if they stream it. I hope they do. Zach said, that's provoking. Well, it depends. It depends what passes in court, not what passes on the internet. Kudo said, if he was being bullied, why would he put himself under the same tenets as bully? Makes no sense. Well, Kudo, first of all, we got several assumptions here. Number one, we don't know if he was being bullied. That's just internet conjecture, which we don't know is true. Number two, if he had a knife with him, maybe he brought the knife with him because he planned on confronting his bully if he was being bullied. Again, I'm responding to a hypothetical. We don't know if this is true. So if I know a bully is bothering me and I know I got to go somewhere where that bully might be, I'm going to bring my weapon. So just in case the bully steps to me again, I'm ready for him. So it does make sense. User said he was defensive already. There's nothing wrong with being defensive. Being defensive does not make you guilty. Sweet P, thank you for the goats. TJC said innocent until proven guilty. Yes. Thoughts and prayers. Okay, fine. Someone said it does matter. What are y'all referring to? Emily said, is it a crime to have a knife at a high school sporting event in Texas? Okay. Now, it depends on why he had the knife. Again, I explained this. It depends on why he had it. If I believe someone's going to do something to me and I bring my weapon because I know I got to go to that place where that person might be, I'm okay with committing this crime to prevent this from happening. Why was he under their tent to begin with? Well, was he? Was it their tent? We don't know. Again, was it their tent? We don't know yet. We need to get more information. Texas did not allow any weapons on school events. Okay, fine. I just told you why it matters, or why it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, and it does at the same time. It doesn't, because if I think someone's going to do something to me, I may bring a knife anyway. And again, he ain't on trial for bringing a knife to school. He's on trial for killing somebody. Emily said 90% is simple. He brought a weapon to a high school sporting event. That is a crime. No, it's not that simple, Emily. He had the intent to use it. That is a crime. He actually used it, and that is the biggest crime. But you have to prove that, Emily. You have a law degree. You work for the state's attorney. You had to prove everything that you just said. Again, I said this at the beginning. I said it again in the middle, and I said it 20 times today. Just because you state something and assert it on the internet does not mean it will pass in a court of law. They are two different entities. What convinces people on Facebook is not the same that convinces a jury of 12 people. And unless you convince the jury, it does not really matter what you say on the internet. AJ Giles said, in the state of Texas, it wouldn't have been allowed at school events or school. Okay, fine. All right, so a bunch of you have said that he's not allowed to bring the knife. It depends on why he brought the knife. And that depends on what his defense team brings to the case, which we do not know. We don't even know who his lawyer is yet. Emily said, someone is unalive because of his intent to use a weapon at a high school sporting event. Well, Emily, you cannot assert the intent of another person. So what you're saying there is based on a false premise. You're claiming that he intended to use the weapon. You don't know what he intended to do with the weapon. You don't know why he had it. Maybe he just forgot it. Maybe he had it in his bag and he forgot it was there. And then he realized it was there. And then when the kid approached him, he said, oh, I got a knife. Let me defend myself. Again, is that possible? Is that probable? I don't think so. But you cannot assert what another person's intention is unless you have the ability to read their minds. And I've yet to meet a human being who can read the mind of another person. Jeremy said the dad knows what was said, but won't say. What dad? Neither of the dads was there. So no dad knows what was said. They know what their kid told them. They don't know what actually happened. Have any of you ever lied to your parents? So the dad doesn't know anything. Emily says, very much against the law to have a weapon at a high school sporting event. You should research. Okay, so a bunch of you keep talking about the weapon at a high school sporting event. I've addressed that already now. Glow said they will not change the charge. They might. I think they might once they get more information. Because a first-degree murder is a very stiff charge. And depending on what mitigating information they have, they might drop it to a second degree or a manslaughter. You never know. Involuntary manslaughter could be a lot of things. J Rock said, post up under someone else's tent to make a point, premeditated murder. Yeah, okay. You don't believe that. And then Lou D just said the school owned the tent, not the brother. They had every right to sit there. Again, we don't know. A bunch of you are asserting things that you do not know. We don't know. All we know is what we heard on the internet. All you're getting your information from what you heard on the internet. Only things we know to be true are a handful of things. All these other things many of you are saying are not things that we know. These are things that you believe. You don't actually know. Any school I know, there are no weapons allowed on the property. Okay, so we established no weapons allowed on the property. Let's just accept that as the truth. There are no weapons allowed on the property. Again, I may not be allowed to bring a gun into the mall, but if I believe that there's a bully in the mall who said he's going to beat me up next time he sees me, I might still bring a gun to the mall. So I will break one law to prevent something worse from happening to me. And that is a mitigating factor in a court case. Leo said, you think people are going to be upset no matter what the decision is? Oh, absolutely. Black versus white? Yes. No matter what happens, a bunch of people are going to be mad. Michelle said he had a knife at school track meet. He was in trouble for having a knife at school prior. That'll be part of the evidence that gets entered if that is true. Michelle, I'm just assuming that what you're saying is true. That'll be part of the evidence. Bigger question is, where were the adults, administrators, coaches? They were there. Again, what they supposed to do? Babysit every single student? A bunch of students sitting around talking to each other at an event does not mean that an adult or supervisor or teacher needs to be right there on top of them, making sure nothing happens. Again, they're not 2 years old. They're 17. What do you want them to be doing? Judged by one said they had pictures of them together. They were friends. Well, maybe. Biggest thing is going to be the length of the knife. We'll see. I don't think that's the biggest thing. Biggest thing is going to be what actually happened before he stabbed the kid. What happened between the time that the kid approached him and him stabbing? That's the biggest thing. Now, the length of the knife will matter. All of these are part of the evidence. But the biggest thing is what happened between the white kid approaching the black kid and the black kid stabbing the white kid. We want to know what happened then. And we don't know. Terry Bora said, finally, a sensible take about all this. Thank you. Joel Duty said, witnesses confirm Hunter account of what happened. Well, which witnesses? And what about the witnesses who don't confirm it? Michelle said that the school track have cameras around. I don't know. And again, if there's a tent, the cameras might be overhead. So maybe it didn't catch it. Again, these are all things we don't know yet. Emily said, the fact is there's someone unalive because of this little freaking boy. Well, Emily, you seem kind of emotional about the subject. But yes, we know someone's unalive. That fact we have established that someone's dead. But why and what will that whether that will pass in a court of law, we don't know yet. So that fact we've already established somebody's dead. That's the reason why we're talking about it. So judged by one said each state has a constitution and their own state constitution. Yes, correct. Troy said you would have been a great lawyer. Yeah, the thing is I would have had to go to law school. And from what I understand about lawyers, they spend a lot of time doing paperwork. I'm not a paperwork guy. I mean, certain types of paperwork, but not the kind that lawyers do. Not my thing. Israel said, does bro think because he's wearing a suit, he a lawyer? LOL. Well, we just answered that one. Kudo said he was at a school event. Yes, we know. Thomas said, let's get money on his books. Well, he doesn't have any books yet. He's not incarcerated. What you can do is donate to his GoFundMe. Probation officer said, knife, he was 17. Texas law, you had to be 18. You had to be 18 to carry a knife. Is that true? I don't know that to be true, but let's assume that it is true. Again, same thing all of you are saying about him carrying a knife. If I believe that someone is going to endanger my safety, I will carry a knife anyway, knowing that I'm breaking the law just to keep myself safe. And there is a legal standing for that. There is legal grounds for that. That does not make him wrong. Cody said, I would think any kind of weapon isn't allowed at any kind of school. Well, what you think is immaterial to the situation, Cody. And by the way, anything can become a weapon. A baseball bat can be a weapon. Again, do schools not allow baseball bats? If they got a baseball team, you got to have a baseball bat. So anything can be a weapon depending on how you use it. I can have a knife in school because I'm eating a steak at lunch. And that knife can become a weapon depending on how I use the knife. So that on the surface, when you first say it, Cody, maybe when you typed it, it might sound like it makes sense. But as soon as you think about it, it doesn't make sense. Daryl said there are 30 witness statements that have not come out. Doesn't look like a good defense. How do you know this, Daryl? How do you know there are 30 witness statements? What's your source? Quay House said, what if someone doesn't believe in the Bible? Does it still count? Not to that person. It doesn't. Saul the fam said, to say this isn't a hate crime is crazy. I don't think hate crime, the term has even been used at all in the whole 2 hours we've been talking. So I don't know where you got that from. Oh, well said, so you think if the roles were reversed, the white kid had the right to take the life of the black kid? Do I think if the roles were reversed, if the exact same situation happened, the roles were reversed, I'd be talking about the exact same way. I would. And those of you familiar with my work, please tell me if I'm lying. Those of you who heard me do these lives, even a handful of times, tell me I'm lying. I'd be saying the exact same things. We just would switch black and white. This is my username. Say, didn't he commit a crime by bringing a knife to the trap? Again, a bunch of you keep leaving that same comment. I've addressed it already. User said, legally, there's no way you can justify self-defense. You don't know as much about the law as you think you do. Yes, you can. You can justify pretty much anything. You got a good enough lawyer and how poorly the prosecution argues their case. You can justify pretty much anything you do. Have you not seen somebody who was, quote unquote, obviously guilty not get convicted? Have you ever seen that before? Happens all the time. Danny said he bought a knife and his gym bag, case closed, is not like a Swiss Army knife in his pocket. The case is not closed. It's far from closed. Daryl said exactly, we'll never know the truth. Intentions will honestly never be known. Exactly. I mean, unfortunately, what's happening here today, it seems like a bunch of you are emotionally engaged in convicting this kid before he goes to court. Let him go to court and let him prove it. This is all it is, folks. He got to go to court and they got to prove it. This is the same way if it had been the other way around. If a white kid had stabbed a black kid, I'd be saying the exact same thing. They have to prove it. The prosecution must prove that this kid did whatever the charge they end up with. Right now is a first-degree homicide. If they go to court on that, they must prove it. They must prove that that's what he was looking to do. And let's find out what the details of first degree are in the state of Texas, because they say in the state of Texas they don't actually call it that. They call it homicide offenses are categorized as murder or capital murder, each carrying distinct penalties. Give me an explanation of the murder charge in the state of Texas. So we want to know what they say. So it's under Chapter 19 in the Texas Penal Code. And here's how it's charged. A person commits murder if they intentionally or knowingly cause the death of another person. They cause death by intending to inflict serious bodily injury and committing an act clearly dangerous to human life, or they commit or attempt to commit a felony other than manslaughter, and in the course of the felony or flight from it, committing an act clearly dangerous to human life that causes death. Okay, so based on this, yeah, I would say they're not changing this charge. Based on the way that they describe murder in the state of Texas, this is going to be a murder charge. Now they don't give it degrees. They just call it murder. So it's murder and there's capital murder in Texas. That's what the only two distinctions they have. So every state is unique. Based on this, and the punishment, I already talked about that. The punishment is 5 to 99 years. Now, Texas law includes a provision that allows murder to be reduced if they can prove they acted under sudden passion. So this is important right here. This might be something that the defense brings up. So listen to this. Texas law includes a provision that a murder can be reduced if the defendant can prove they acted under sudden passion, which means strong emotion like fear, rage, or resentment that arose from an adequate cause, i.e. something that might provoke a reasonable person. If proven, the charge may be downgraded to a second-degree felony, which carries a 2 to 20-year sentence. I think the defense is probably going to try to use this, the sudden passion exception. Sudden passion exception. Sudden passion means strong emotion like fear. So he feared for his safety, or he was angry because the kid was bothering him, and then he stabbed him. And he had an adequate cause, meaning someone provoked him. I think they should try for this. If I'm his defense team, this is the first thing I'm thinking. We might try this sudden passion exception. But again, this is very, very early in this case. Now, capital murder is when you murder a police officer, a kid under the age of 10, or you murder multiple people. So that's not the case in this. So it's only these two. The just murder, period, or sudden passion exception is a possibility based on what we know. Again, those are the laws in the state of Texas. So let's talk about the size of the knife since y'all keep bringing it up. Let's see what they say. If someone stabs someone in the state of Texas, does the size of the knife matter? And if so, how and in what ways? So in both a criminal charge and especially in self-defense, let's break it down. So they say the weapon possession laws in the state of Texas. So let's get into it, folks, since y'all keep bringing this up. A location-restricted knife is any blade over 5.5 inches. So what was the size of the knife? Do we know? Do we know the size of the knife? They say over 5.5 is location-restricted. It is not illegal in general, but it is prohibited in schools, school events, and a bunch of other places that I'm not going to read here. So in a stabbing case, if you use a knife over 5.5 inches, additional charges could be added for unlawful possession. So that's what many of you are saying. What I'm saying is that that is the least of his problems, unlawful possession. All right, unlawful possession, that the penalty for that is nothing compared to a 5 to 99 years for murder, which is what I'm saying. So yes, he might have broke one law to save himself from something else. Again, if he gets passable, what do they call it? Passable, what was the thing I just read? Sudden passion exception. Now, the other thing about a knife, in violent crime or self-defense, if a person claims self-defense, the prosecutor might argue that using a large, deadly weapon is excessive depending on the circumstance. So again, it depends on what the prosecution does and how they argue it. Knife size alone, this is important, the size of the knife alone does not determine guilt. What matters most is what I already told you, mofos. Let me say it again. Intent, and context. We know the outcome is the kid's dead. So that's going to hurt him. The fact that the kid's dead is going to hurt Carmelo Anthony's case. But the context, we don't know yet. We only know what we've heard. Intent, we don't know yet. We only know what we've heard. So that's the situation. And do we know what the size of the knife was? I haven't heard anybody say officially what the size of the knife was. As far as I'm concerned, we don't know. But if any of you actually know, you have a source, please tell me what it is. Marley said, what was the other kid going to threaten him with? His tennis shoe? Well, think about it. If Shaquille O'Neal is threatening you and you're 5'7", is that a threat? If you believe Shaq could beat you up with his bare hands, is that a threat? Yes, it is. Yimto said, what happened to stand your ground? Nothing happened to it. Stand your ground is not as simple as, oh, well, I'm standing my ground, so I just did what I wanted to do. I already talked about that. Marcy said, pulling out a knife is only justified in knife if his life was actually in danger. That wasn't the case. Well, I already talked about that, Mercy. Leo said, do you think the roles will reverse as you get national news coverage and riots? I don't know if it's getting national news coverage even right now. And I haven't seen any riots. All we're getting right now is social media talk. So it's generally still not a big story yet. Some of y'all don't even know about it. A lot of people have the kind of reasoning skills that's going to land them in prison. Nagasaki, maybe. I would not believe things you hear on social media. Most people say things that they don't actually do. So I wouldn't believe anything off social media. Danny Howard, stop spamming my comments. I'm going to have to kick you out. Where am I in the comments? All right, I'm going to take maybe 15 more minutes at the most of comments, and then we will wrap this one up. So a lot of comments here today. Let's see. That's a lot. All right. Did he bond out? Last I heard, he had not yet. I believe the bond was set at $1 million. They're trying to either get it lowered or they're trying to raise the money. So let's see. GoFundMe was taken down. Well, some of them were, not all of them. Some of them were, not all of them. Rose said, you think he's got a good self-defense case? I think he's going to try. I don't know if it's a good case. I think he's going to try. He has no choice. What else are you going to do? You stab somebody. What else are you going to argue if it's not self-defense? And I just read the laws in Texas. I don't think he has an option of doing anything other than trying it. Now, is it going to win? I would consider it good if it wins, and it's bad if it loses. So that's what I would look at. Danny said, I wish I was the prosecutor in this case. Oh, yeah? You're going to go get a law degree in 6 months? Because that's when this case is going to start. Roxy said, he is in the wrong. He skipped school instead to kill someone. That's against the law in more ways. Roxy, okay. Come on. We're talking like legalities here. We're not talking this conjecture again. O2 said, one question. If you fear for your life, why refuse to move? Well, you're framing this incorrectly. The kid said move, and the guy said, touch me and see what happens. So he was basically challenging the kid. Now, again, if the white kid had just walked away from that because he didn't want to see what happened, then there's no fear. But if the white kid says, okay, and I'm going to beat your ass, and he starts to do it, or it feels like he's going to do it, then you fear for your life. And at that point, you react. Again, sudden passion exception. So it's possible in the state of Texas. But we don't know yet. Kudo says, school districts have their own policies on weapons. It's not against Texas Penal Code 46.032. I don't know what the rest of it was, what the rest of your comment was. We don't know yet. Okay, so again, this is not a court of law that we're having this conversation in. We're just talking about what we know right now. OU Mix says, stake at school. Now, that's funny. Hey. Speaking Truth said, I wouldn't want you as a lawyer. I wouldn't want me as a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. So good. I'm glad you wouldn't want me as a lawyer. I'm not available. Rachel said, you carry a knife and purposely send under their tent, but he claimed he didn't intend to do that. I don't know what he claimed. I haven't heard him say anything, Rachel. So what are you talking about? I haven't heard him say anything. So we don't know his intent. We cannot judge the intent of another human being. ADZ said, Austin put his hand on his shoulder and moved his bag. What's your source? I haven't heard anyone confirm that happened. Quick Draw said, another person deeming their opinions as fact. What opinion have I stated as a fact? I don't even like the concept of quote unquote facts because people misuse them. So I have not done that. Peekaboo said, there aren't any laws or rules in protecting yourself. Yes, there are. It's called self-defense. And that's a law in every state. Bell said, would stand your ground count considering he was under the tent of the other team? We don't even know if that was the case yet. We're not quite sure whose tent it was. Was it the other team? Could anybody sit there? We don't know. So there's a whole lot of things we don't know the answer to yet, folks. It means we can't draw too many conclusions here. A bunch of you are trying to draw conclusions because a bunch of you have a vested interest in things going one way or another. I have no vested interest, so I can look at either side of the situation. Baby girl said it was a hate crime. Prove it wasn't. That's called proving a negative. That's a logical fallacy. Enoch said we wouldn't know about it if it was the opposite. I'm not so sure. I'm not sure about that. Daniel Penny is a white guy. He choked out a black guy on the subway in New York. You know about that one, right? All of us knew about that one. So that debunks what you just said. Isaiah don't GAF. To be honest, you're making opinions too early. We just got to wait until they go to court to get more info. Well, Isaiah, Let me tell you something. If most people thought like you, then we wouldn't be having all this conversation right now, and I would have ended this live 45 minutes ago. Most people don't have the discipline to say that, so everyone's trying to jump to conclusions. There are no conclusions, folks. There aren't any. Johnny said he went there looking for trouble. See here, right after that, he went there looking for trouble. How do you know? He antagonized the victim. How do you know? He admitted stabbing. That's the only thing we know is that he admitted the stabbing. Everything else we don't know. Johnny, you're making these assertions based on absolutely nothing. Nana said, if he was scared, why did he sit near them? We don't know if he was scared. I'm saying it's possible because we don't know. I'm just telling you possibilities. We don't know. We cannot jump to any conclusions, folks. Cynthia said, a pencil can be a weapon. Exactly. Nana said, why did he skip school that day? I didn't know that he skipped school. And even if he did, we don't know. Again, most of the answers to these questions are we don't know. Rachel said, you can't, not with deadly force in Texas. It depends on the circumstance, Rachel. Just because the state of Texas does not mean you can't use deadly force in certain circumstances, and it depends on how well your lawyers argue your case. Two people would do the exact same thing. Somebody could break into my house in Texas. I use a gun, kill them, and get in and become innocent, or I walk away off the case innocent. You could use a gun right next door to me. Somebody break into your house, you kill them, and you end up guilty. So just because the law says one thing and the situations are quote unquote the same does not mean the outcomes will be the same. I've already explained this more than once in this live. Courtney said, I've yet to hear you ever truly take a side, just speaking logic on every topic. Well, that's what I aim to do. But the issue is, Courtney, people want me to take a certain side. And if I make a point that happens to go against what they want to believe, then they accuse me of doing something when it's actually them. Some of you have some passion about this subject. I suggest you become more dispassionate about it. Brielle says, as long as the knife is under 5.5 inches, it is legal to bring to school, etc. Yes, according to what I just read, that is true. But again, even if the knife was 10 inches long, if I am in fear of my personal safety, I might bring in the knife anyway. It depends on the situation. How much fear am I in? And do I truly believe somebody might hurt me? I might bring the knife anyway, knowing that I'm breaking the law, and do it anyway. Chi-Town said, probability of a predominantly white jury, 0. No way it's going to be a predominantly white jury. Doesn't mean that any outcome is going to happen, but no way. MSG said, I bet you my house he gets a 30, 40, and an 8x8. You'll bet your house? How big is your house and how much is it worth? I need to know the size of your house to know how much of a bet you're making here. Baby girl said, you can't at all make the boy less than he was a bully and the aggressor. Well, we can't make anything, baby girl, because we don't have enough information. So again, many of you need to stop jumping to conclusions here. You have no information. How are you drawing these conclusions with no information? This is what human beings do. So you are a good example of I'm not calling y'all average as people, but you're a good example of the average person, how the average person thinks. You all drawing these conclusions based on having no information. Y'all don't know anything. How are y'all drawing these conclusions? Based on what? Sunshine said, all emotional speculation. Exactly. Or hopefully you're talking about them and not me. Troy Bound said, Emmett Till's murders are found not guilty. Yes, which is a great example of how something can be quote unquote obvious and someone still walks away from the crime. And someone could be obviously innocent and still go to jail. So again, you all, and also glad you brought up that just because you can name what happened in some famous cases, for every famous case you can name, there are 1,000 cases that you don't know about where the exact opposite happened. So please don't think that just because the cases you can name, most cases that end up like OJ, the person goes to jail. Most cases like George Zimmerman, they go to jail. Most cases like Daniel Penny and Kyle Rittenhouse, you're going to jail. So just because you got these exceptions that you know about does not mean disproves the rule. Crystal said, you can tell from your live that you are not being biased. Some people are unable to have, well, of course, I'm not being biased because I have no vested interest in the outcome of this situation. Whether the white kid was right or the black kid was right, I really don't care. I'm just talking about the subject. But some of you care strongly on one side or another, so you may have an issue with some of the things that I'm saying. ADZ said that's why they'll bring it down to manslaughter. Possibly. I think the defense is going to try to get them to bring it down, but that doesn't mean they're going to do it because the prosecution decides what they want to charge. And the defense, all they got to do is argue whatever gets charged. So they may ask for a lesser charge, but it may not necessarily be what they go with. Baby girl said he needs capital. Yeah, he needs capital. He needs a lawyer. This is what he needs, a good one. Guess who said, why are you making it about race? That's the problem. Always want to make it about race. Well, it is about race. That's the reason why we're talking about it, because it's about race. The reason there's 160 people in here listening to me right now is because this is about race. If it wasn't about race, we wouldn't be talking about it. So unfortunately, this is humanity, guess who? And you're making it about race by even saying that in the comment. DEI higher dip said good morning. Good morning to you. DEI, you like my tie? Thank you. Craig Alexander says usually the same in every state. What is it? What are you referring to? Craig said they also had death. Yeah, they do. Tana says he claims self-defense. He assumes the burden of proof. Well, his lawyer does. That's why he needs a good lawyer. ADZ said he will take a plea. If they offer a plea, we'll see what the offer is. We don't know yet. Oscar said most murders are 20 life in prison. Well, in the state of Texas, it's 5 to 99 years if you are convicted. Let's see. Oscar said, I lived in Texas and worked in corrections. All right, great. Shout out to people working in corrections. OU Mick said, I'm afraid of another parent at school event. Still illegal for me to bring a gun to school event. Yes, I know. It depends on what you're afraid of them doing. OU Mick, that's the thing. If you're afraid of them shooting you, then would you bring the gun to protect yourself? I think you would. Now, if you're afraid of them yelling at you, then bringing the gun is a little bit too much. So again, there's a continuum of force. So it depends on what you're defending against. If I think someone's going to shoot me, I'll bring a gun somewhere illegally to defend my life because I can justify my bringing the gun. Even I will break one law to prevent losing my life. 505 5050 says book it 10 years. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Lauren said they're already looking to reduce the charges in Texas. Who's they? Who are you talking about, Laura? Who's they? Teresa said if he feared for his safety, he should have left. Possibly. I mean, he's a 17-year-old kid. So, again, depends on what his line of thinking was and how he was raised. That sounds good now that all of us have the distance to talk about it. Well, he could have did this. He could have did that. But in the moment, when somebody's right in your face threatening you, what would you do? It sounds good to say it now that we all have distance, even the things that I said. But, again, it's a whole different story when somebody's right there in your face. You may respond differently when you're the one in the situation. Casey said, I don't see him getting anything else but guilty, especially in Collin County. Okay. Well, that's the reason why they do the court cases, Casey. Because if it was that clear, he'd just go to jail and they wouldn't have a case. They have a court case for a reason. He left home carrying a knife in his gym bag and guarantee he'll be found guilty. You want to guarantee that, Daniel? How much money are you going to put on that guarantee? I don't believe you guarantee unless you put something real on it. Jamie King said, premeditated first degree, see ya. Yeah, we'll see. ADZ said the Texas charged manslaughter. So I was just reading this. So it is called sudden passion exception. Where do they have manslaughter? So in Texas, it's just murder. So if you intentionally or knowingly cause death, so all the things that go into murder, he did. But there is a sudden passion exception. So if something happens in a moment, like a bang bang situation, and you are fearful, rage, or resentment, then you could possibly get, they call it an adequate cause, something that provoked you, which it fits this description. You can get a second degree felony murder charge, and that is 2 to 20 in prison. So it depends on the situation. So is there manslaughter? The answer is no. There is no manslaughter. Or is there? Let me see. Let me ask about the manslaughter. So actually there is. Let me see. They were giving me different information. So the murder charge is what I asked about. So manslaughter in Texas. Here's what it says. Manslaughter is a distinct form of criminal homicide, separate from murder. It is under Texas Penal Code 19.04. Person commits manslaughter if you recklessly cause the death of an individual. So this one also could work. So again, this is why I don't know they're going to keep this murder charge. They might give him a manslaughter charge. He recklessly caused the death. Maybe he was just trying to get the kid off him. And the argument, if I'm the defense attorney, this is what I could possibly say. If I'm trying to go for manslaughter, I'll say something like, look, my client is only 17 years old. He is a kid. He was in a dispute with another kid. He had the knife with him to protect himself. He was just trying to hurt the kid and get the kid to leave him alone. He wasn't trying to kill him. And he recklessly caused this kid's death. He didn't mean to kill the kid. He just meant to poke him. He wasn't trying to kill him. So he recklessly killed the kid, but he wasn't trying to kill him. And that could be, again, manslaughter. Penalty for manslaughter is the same as the penalty for that sudden passion exception, exact same penalty, 2 to 20. But there's no sudden passion clause when it comes to manslaughter. So the sudden passion only applies to a murder charge. So manslaughter is just manslaughter by itself. So again, this is the reason why you need a law degree for this shit. This is why I don't want to be a lawyer, because I don't want to be sitting reading documents all day. That's what lawyers have to do. Y'all think being a lawyer is the fucking Matlock and Law and Order on TV. That ain't what being a lawyer. Being a lawyer is reading paperwork. I don't want to read paperwork all day. That puts me to sleep. So ADZ, yes, they do have manslaughter. Peekaboo said Carmelo's personal space was violated, self-defense. Well, if you invade my personal space, Peekaboo, I can push you off of me. If I'm walking through the Walgreens and you invade my personal space, does that constitute justification to me pulling out a knife and stabbing you? Answer is no, it doesn't. So while you are directionally correct, you are not legally correct. Self-defense is a lot bigger than just, oh, you violated my space, so I'm going to do what I want to do. Again, I said this at the beginning of the live. You cannot just do whatever you want to do just because you claim self-defense. You can still end up in prison, even though you claim you were defending yourself. Be Nice said, why are we playing like we don't know how this is going to play out? All right, how's it going to play out? Give us your prediction. Go on the record. So I want to hear what you say so you can't act like you didn't say it. Melatonin said, I think we are still very much in a sit back and watch phase. Yes, we are very much there. But as you can see, we still been talking about this for 2.5 hours because everybody has something to say about it. The fact that he carried the knife indicates premeditation. No, it doesn't. If I'm carrying a gun, that doesn't mean I premeditate to shoot you. Even if I end up shooting you, doesn't mean that was my plan. Even if I know you. I might use it because it's a bang-bang situation. Again, Texas has an exception called the sudden passion exception. I think they should probably argue that one on a murder charge. So this murder charge, I think they're going to try to bring this down. I think the prosecution might be smart to bring it down because getting a conviction on a murder charge is a much higher burden of proof for the prosecution. Jamie said, this cat is asking Google. I'm actually asking ChatGPT, and ChatGPT has accurate information. So Jamie King, if you got better information than ChatGPT, please tell me where to get it from. Tell me where I can find your information. There's nothing wrong with asking Google. They got access to information. What's wrong with asking Google? Who do you ask when you don't know the answer to a question? You just guess? I mean, what's your point? Oscar says capital murder can also be murdering someone that has something of value you can take from them. Not in the state of Texas. I get what you're saying, Oscar, but it depends on the state. Every state has their own laws. OU Mick says size doesn't matter. It's a weapon, can't have it on school premises. Not according to what I just read from the state of Texas. The laws in the state of Texas, OU Mick. It does matter. Gigi said it was a pocket knife. Again, we don't know. Again, so nobody knows the size of the knife. That's the whole thing. We don't know yet. So all of this is just, we don't know. The general answer to this whole situation is we don't know. Nana said he committed murder. Well, by the letter of the dictionary, yes, he murdered somebody because he took their life. Now, legally, we don't know. That's where we're at. We don't know. Jay Rocker said, can't use stand your ground. No, maybe. Let's see what they say about that. What are the conditions of using the stand your ground law in self-defense in the state of Texas when you stab someone to death in an altercation? So here I am asking ChatGPT. They say the stand your ground law and the Castle Doctrine give people broad rights to use deadly force in self-defense without a duty to retreat if specific legal conditions are met. If you kill someone in an altercation and claim self-defense, here are the conditions that must apply. Here we go. Number one, you did not provoke the encounter. You cannot be the aggressor. So you must also, a couple things. So y'all got to understand this. So all of you claiming self-defense, stand your ground. Here are the 3 things you must prove if you use stand your ground in the state of Texas. Number one, you must not have provoked the encounter. You cannot be the aggressor. And if you did provoke it, you must try to withdraw. Okay, so was he the aggressor? I think many people have agreed he was not. But again, we don't for sure know, but a lot of people believe he was not. Number 2, you must have had a legal right to be where you are. So you had to be in a place that you have a lawful right to be. Home, vehicle, business, or any public place. Was this a public place? Yes. You do not have to retreat before using deadly force if you meet this condition. Number 3, here's the third one. I think the first 2 he met. Here's the third one. Oh, that's more than 3. It's actually 5. Number 3, you must have reasonably believed deadly force was immediately necessary. This is the tricky one. This is where he's running into trouble. This one right here. Carmelo Anthony is in trouble with this one right here. And ChatGPT even says, this is the key. The threat must be imminent, right? Meaning you're threatened right now and against your life or serious bodily injury to stop aggravated kidnapping, a sexual assault, a robbery, or a burglary. I don't think any of those were happening. Your belief must be what a reasonable person would feel in the same situation. That's his problem. His entire case rests on this third point right here. And I already told you this at the beginning of the live. If you don't believe deadly force was immediately necessary and you can't prove it, you have a problem legally. Carmelo Anthony has a problem. Number 4, the force used must be proportionate. In other words, I told you this. There's a continuum of force. You can't use deadly force to respond to non-deadly force. So if a guy's trying to shake my hand and I shoot him, I went overboard. That's deadly force for a non-deadly situation. You can't do that. You go to jail for that. That's his issue. That's another issue he has. And again, if there were less lethal options available and you didn't use them, you have a problem. So again, he could have pushed the kid. He could have socked the kid. He could have ran away from the kid. Instead, he pulled out his knife and stabbed the kid. That's an issue. And his lawyer has to figure that out. And number 5, deadly force must stop once the threat ends. I think he did satisfy that one. So he stabbed the kid and he ran away. So he did stop the deadly force. In other words, you can't just keep doing it. So in other words, if someone is threatening you and you pull out a gun to scare them and they start backing away from you because you pulled out the gun and then you shoot them 3 times anyway, you went overboard because the gun, just showing the gun, stopped them. It stopped the threat. So if they stop threatening you by walking away and you shoot them anyway, you went overboard as soon as you fire that shot. So this is how the law works, folks. So any of you who does not understand how the law works, you should learn. Good news is ChatGPT can tell you if you ask it the right questions. You see me, I'm asking ChatGPT and give you the information right here in front of you. So what are the rules of self-defense? I just gave them to you. He went to the other boy's tent. We don't know about that. All right, I can't keep reading these same comments. Y'all keep saying the same stuff. Or not y'all the same people, but a bunch of you are saying many of the same things. So stand your ground will work in court since he could have left. In the state of Texas, you are not required to move away if you believe you're standing your ground. That's what the standing ground law means. There are other states in which there's no stand your ground and you are required to exit the premises or try to run away. So y'all should know the laws in the states in which you live. There are some states that there's no stand your ground law and someone threatens you, your legal mandate is to leave. Your legal mandate is to run away if somebody's threatening you. And if you stand there and shoot them and there's no stand your ground law in your state, even though you in the street law, you feel justified because they're threatening you. You didn't start it. They threatened you. You are legally required to get out of there. But if you don't, and there's no stand your ground law, you're going to jail. That's what it is. If there is a stand your ground law, you don't have to walk away. But if there's not, you do have to walk away. So do all y'all know the stand your ground laws in the states in which you live? Which states in the United States have a stand your ground law, where you are not required to move away when someone threatens you? And a lot of people started getting mad about the stand your ground law after that Zimmerman Trayvon Martin case. So ChatGPT is thinking. He might be busy right now. MSG said they were the same size. I'm not arguing what size either one of them were. I'm giving you a hypothetical. Bourbon says, is there any video evidence? Not that we know about. So 30 U.S. states have some form of stand your ground law, but they're all different. That's the thing about the stand your ground law. You don't really know. So there are certain states that say you have no duty whatsoever to retreat in public if you are threatened. So y'all should know what states these are. Does any of you know if you live in a state that has this law where you have no duty to retreat? Meaning if somebody bothers you, you don't have to walk away at all and you can do not whatever you want to do. Shouldn't say that. So there's a bunch of them. There's too many of them for me to list. So Florida, state that I live in, is one. Texas is another one. Utah, West Virginia, Wisconsin. There's a whole bunch of them. I'm not reading all that. All right. A couple more questions, then I got to go, folks. I got things to do. All right. It's absolutely correct about stand your ground laws. Certain states, some states don't have them. Yes. And every state has different interpretations of the law. So none of you don't take this as a blanket. I can just do whatever I want when someone approaches me. It depends. There are other states. Let me tell you these states. There are states that require you to retreat if you can. California, you cannot stand your ground. Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Nebraska, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, Washington. Seems to me a lot of blue states, you are required to run away and retreat if somebody threatens you. And in a lot of the red states, you can stand your ground. Y'all can draw whatever conclusions you wish from that one. All right, so we got to 100K likes. I think this is the first time I'm ever getting to 100K, actually, that I know about. We had 100K likes. Thank you, everybody, for the likes. For those of you who love this live, come back tomorrow. If you hated this live, come back tomorrow. If you are not quite sure how you feel about me, come back tomorrow. I'll do these live streams Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern. The topic is to be determined. Don't know what I'm going to talk about. It depends on the situation at hand, whatever's going on in the news. Sometimes I talk about Trump, sometimes about Elon, sometimes about the government, sometimes about general politics, sometimes about this. Who knows? Maybe a black person might stab somebody else today, and I'll talk about that tomorrow. Maybe a white person will stab somebody, and I'll talk about that. So we don't know. The topic is to be determined. Make sure my YouTube is where I do all the replays. So if you want to see the replay of everything I talked about today, is on YouTube. Just go to my link in my profile on TikTok. The YouTube link is there. Also follow me on Instagram. The link in my TikTok profile is also, there's a link there to my Instagram. And if you want to get a copy of my newest book called The Sales Discipline System, this is where a book that I wrote to help salespeople step their sales game up. Go to the link in my profile. So it's 3 links in my profile: YouTube, Instagram, and get a link to this book. You can find out more about me at workonyourgameuniversity.com. Or if you go get this book, you'll be on my email list. You'll learn more about me and everything else that I do on a professional business size. And all right, I appreciate you, baby girl. Thank you for coming in. Even if you disagree with what I said here today, I try to be logical. I try to be objective, and I try to base things on what we know to be true, not based on things that we don't know to be true. And in this case, there's a whole lot of things we don't know. So as we learn more, I will talk about this again when we get more information. But right now, we don't have enough to say anything other than what I said. But I appreciate everybody here. I will see you all tomorrow, 8 a.m. Eastern. Topic, we don't know yet. We don't know what the topic is going to be tomorrow. My planned topic, I will tell you that. My planned topic tomorrow is when people say that if you supported Donald Trump and or MAGA, that you went against your own self-interest. So they say this to people who are, maybe if you're an immigrant or if you're a minority, or if you don't like what they think is happening with the stock market. So we might talk about Trump and MAGA tomorrow. Maybe not. It depends what happens in the news. Something crazy happens today, then I'll talk about that tomorrow. So we don't know yet. So we'll see if something crazy happens. Maybe I'll talk about that. Or if any of you have an idea for a topic, I'll ask you tomorrow. But today, I got to go. It's been 2.5 hours. I'm hungry. Y'all have a good day. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Work on your game. We out of here. Thank you to my moderators as well.